And good evening. Welcome to Sask Today's coverage of Canada Votes 2025. I'm Andrew Dawson, Director of News and Information Programming here at Harvard Media. To my immediate right, I'll be your host, and to my immediate right is my commentator and co-host tonight, our senior reporter and political analyst with Sask Today. We have John Cairns with us. Whether it be through SASKTODAY.ca or on air at 620CKRM.com, GX94 Radio in Yorkton, or any web platform you're joining us on tonight, we just want to thank you for what is going to be an historic night, because any night is an election night. The polls have officially closed for the 45th Canadian general election, an election which came a little earlier on the calendar, as there wasn't a legal obligation to have one until the fall, until September, as a matter of fact. But the political sands shifted far faster than anyone could have really anticipated. A new U.S. president and a different trade agenda from the U.S., quite frankly, is what we saw put a tidal wave through our election campaign. And it brought about a massive surge in Canadian patriotism, which we haven't seen in decades. So as we await the results of Canadians casting votes from sea to shining sea, we are going to talk a little bit about how it was we got here. So let's bring in John Cairns first of all. John, I was looking at some polling data from the end of December of 2024.
Yeah.
Let me just read this to you guys, and everybody out there can hear this too. So this is a Leger poll that came out. I remember doing the news stories on this in December 2024. Pierre Poilievre's Conservative Party is ahead by 22 points. Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party is trailing behind. If a federal election were held on that day in early December, 43% of Canadians would vote for the Conservative Party of Canada. 21% would have voted for Justin Trudeau's Liberal Party. The NDP were at 19% in this poll. And not just that, but favorability ratings. 7 out of 10 Canadians dissatisfied with Justin Trudeau's government. Only 26% were satisfied. That was only 5 months ago.
Yeah.
And things have changed just a little bit since then, John.
Things have changed quite a lot. And at that point in time, those poll numbers that you were referring to actually freaked the Liberals out severely. They were looking at a wipeout in the coming election, and there was a lot of talk within Liberal circles about what do we do about this. We would probably need to change the leader, and eventually the point came when it happened, and it came right after the resignation, that blow up with Chrystia Freeland resigning from cabinet over the direction of policies in the Liberal government, just the whole direction of the Liberal government seemed to be going in the wrong direction, and you had a lot of people bailing out. You had incumbents announcing they were not running again.
Yeah.
And, it was just not a good time to be a Liberal at that point, and that led to Trudeau announcing his resignation, and then things changed rapidly after that.
And if you look at, just to your point, when you talked about the number of cabinet ministers that left the Liberal government, or just backbenchers as well, but there were others on both parties. But after the election in September 2021, which was the last time we did all this, the Liberals had 160 seats, the Conservatives 119, the BQ 32, the NDP 25, the Green 2. When this Parliament, the 44th Parliament, was dissolved, there were 338 seats. The Liberals were down 8 at 152. The Conservatives had 120, so they went up 1. The Bloc went up 1 to 33. The NDP lost 1. They dropped to 24. But there's 2 Greens and then 3 Independents and 4 vacancies. There were 4 vacant seats available tonight as well. So very, very interesting how those sands shifted throughout that. That election that Justin Trudeau called in September of 2021 was a bit of a snap election. He was trying to get out of the minority situation that he was in, and we basically ended up with almost the same numbers.
Well, 2021, as everyone knows, that was a COVID election.
Yes.
And COVID-19 and the restrictions, that was an issue in the election.
Yes.
And I know that for the PPC, for Maxime Bernier, that was a big issue for him. And his party played a major spoiler role in that election, probably cost the Conservatives a number of close races. And a lot happened after that 2021 election, because it was the following year that the Freedom Convoy happened, and all of that controversial stuff started to take place. And it was also the following year that the Conservatives dumped their leader because Aaron O'Toole paid the political price with his MPs, and the MPs dumped him, and that set the stage for Pierre Poilievre to enter the scene and win the leadership, and here we are today. And
let's be honest, one of Poilievre's key supporters back then, when he first became leader, was Andrew Scheer here in Regina. Former Speaker of the House, but and obviously he lost an election to Justin Trudeau as well. So I'm sure he's looking for a little bounce back tonight and try to get back into government. But very interesting how the dynamic between the two is that, a Prairie MP is playing such a prominent role in a national campaign with the federal leader.
Well, Andrew Scheer has been very prominent. He's been on social media. He's done videos. He's been out on the national campaign as well. He was out in Southern Ontario. I believe he was in an Ajax riding, and I believe in Burlington as well, knocking on doors with candidates. And if you're a prominent member of the party, that's what you're called on to do, is to go and help other campaigns and lend that voice, and that's what he's been able to do in this campaign here.
It's been very interesting, just the dynamic again between the two, and obviously if the Conservatives form government, you would assume Andrew Scheer, the MP here in Regina, would be, or one of the MPs in Regina, would probably figure prominently in that cabinet, maybe Deputy Prime Minister, maybe House Leader, who knows, but he'll certainly feature prominently. Let's have a quick look at some numbers, and we want to explain to some people here, first of all, we rely on Elections Canada numbers because those are the factual numbers. Those are the numbers that we go by. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's all these media outlets that are on the webpage and people as well and all kinds of stuff, but they've been having trouble keeping their page up tonight. But I am looking at a current page right now, and I don't think we've had time to put this into a graphic yet, so I'll just read these numbers out for you. The Liberals are leading or elected in 33 ridings. The Conservatives leading or elected in 22 ridings. The Bloc Québécois in 8. So that's where we're at so far. We don't have any numbers yet, I don't believe, on the NDP. Let me just have a look down the webpage here a little bit further. And there we go. So yeah, they don't have anybody leading or elected, but they do have 35,000 votes. And just to put that into some context, the Liberals so far have 420,000 plus votes in favor of them. The Conservatives about 326,000 votes. Still, obviously, we are in the first few polls that have opened on the East Coast or counted on the East Coast, John. But anything look interesting to you in these numbers so far?
Actually, these numbers are changing on the fly here. It's now Liberal 37, Conservative 26, Bloc 9, NDP are leading in 1. So they're on the board finally. And the numbers out of Atlantic Canada were quite interesting because the Conservatives did a little bit better than what they expected by about a couple of seats.
Yeah.
So a lot of Conservatives on social media, they were really excited about that, and thought that was a good sign for them going into the rest of the country. And they managed to take a seat away from the Liberals in Newfoundland. And right now we had numbers suggesting that in Central Nova that Sean Fraser was trailing there by just a couple of hundred votes.
Yeah, so, still not finished counting, but that's...
still a while to go in that one, but that's something to keep an eye on for sure, is that particular riding.
So again, the number that the parties need tonight is 172. Now you're probably saying, wait a minute, Andrew, that's not how many you needed for a majority last time. Well, there's 5 more seats this time around. There were 338 in the 2021 and the general election even before that. But now you need 172 seats. You get to that magic number, you have a majority. The big question is, John, can anyone get to that number tonight? I mean, we've had 2 successive minority governments in election. The political sands have shifted so much in the last month. I mean, I don't care how long you've been a political analyst or how much information you have. I don't think anybody really knows how all this is going to play out tonight, John.
Yeah, it's a lot of people look at the polls and they think they know what's going to happen based on the polls, but polls can be wrong, as we found out in Saskatchewan in the last election, because in that election, going into Election Day, pollsters had the NDP up 3 points, 4 points, 5 points, and the final result had the Sask party winning by 12 points.
Yeah.
So you can't. It's kind of you can't rely too heavily on the polls. Like they're a snapshot in time, and a lot of the time it comes down to organization and getting out the vote, and who has a momentum going into Election Day, because that could really change things up too.
And that's one thing the Conservative Party has always done well. I mean, in all the years that I've covered federal elections, the Conservatives' ground game, in other words, the code word used for getting their vote out, is very good. They're very well organized, and they do a very good job in getting their people to the polls and making sure that they get a chance to vote. So just some quick numbers for you again, that we are still having some issues with the Elections Canada website, but the current numbers we have now, and it seems to be stabilized now in terms of getting this information: 42 Liberal, 33 Conservative, 12 Bloc Québécois, 2 NDP, and we're starting to see some poll counts now into Quebec as we get into there, John. Quebec's got to be the Liberal savior tonight. I mean, I think that's really it. If they do well in Quebec, the odds are they'll get to hold on to government, but there's still a whole lot of blue votes to count out west.
Yeah, that's right. And in the past few days, we have heard stories that perhaps the Bloc was coming on in Quebec on the heels of Blanchette's performance in the debate. And so we've been hearing a lot of talk about that. So we'll have to see how that plays out in Quebec, and how the results are doing across the country.
One of the things we wanted to talk about tonight, now everybody knows there are, as I mentioned, there are 343 seats up for grabs in across the country, but there are 14 here in Saskatchewan, which is a very small percentage number of the seats, but that's what we have. Just before all this, too, 7.3 million people voted in advance polls in this election. That's a 25% increase from the 5.8 million in the 2021, which again was the COVID election, right? Which is most people sent in mail. A lot of people back in that day sent mail-in ballots in. So that's the numbers that we're looking at tonight. But let's talk about Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about some key ridings. You talked about Saskatoon being a key one. Was it Saskatoon University? You talked about
Saskatoon University. Saskatoon West was another one.
Yeah.
Could I mention that we actually have some results in from Saskatchewan?
Do we do?
We do.
Well, then please, by all means, John, let's get right to that first.
And I think we have our first clear winner here tonight as well in Battleford's Lloydminster.
That one's going to be interesting. It's a wall of blue here in Saskatchewan. All 14 seats are Conservative blue, and were Conservative blue in the last election. So let's talk about Saskatoon University first.
Recent polls that the Liberals have leaked out that have suggested that it's actually a neck-and-neck race there. We'll have to wait and see whether or not that's true or not. But the Liberals in Saskatoon, Carney showed up in Saskatoon twice and had rallies twice in Saskatoon.
Yeah.
And that rarely happens if you're a Liberal. I mean, that tells you a lot where the leaders are going during an election campaign, and the fact that the Liberals had 2 rallies in Saskatoon, one, I guess, three weeks ago, and then the other just this past weekend, on Sunday, in fact, with Carney in Saskatoon. That tells you that the Liberals are looking at Saskatoon, and they're seeing the numbers, and they're thinking, we may have a shot here. We may have a chance. And they're certainly targeting Saskatoon and also targeting the northern riding as well. They think they have a shot there.
We'll give you some updates on the numbers that are coming in. We're just waiting for some more, but we're just going to continue our conversation here. Another one of the key ridings we talked about was Regina Wascana. Michael Cram's riding. You have Kimberly Up of the Green Party in there. You have Peter Bruce of the People's Party of Canada in there. Caitlin Stadnick. And Jeffrey Walters running for the Liberals there.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I mean, Jeffrey's tried to run for all kinds of seats, Mr. Walters has, in the last little while. But what was really interesting was the fact that Mr. Cram didn't show up for the all candidates debate, which was kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I know that Jeff Walters made made a big issue of that on social media, and he pointed that out every chance he got, and I found that quite interesting. Usually you show up for the debates or the all-candidates meetings if you want to get your name out there, but for a lot of candidates, and I'm seeing this with a number of Conservative candidates, they see it as a bit of a risk that you might put your foot in your mouth and say the wrong thing and get in trouble on a big-time national scale.
Well, especially as we just talked about, considering back around Christmas time, Pierre Poilievre was measuring 24 Sussex for drapes and where he was going to put the furniture. You know, I mean, it was that done. He was that far ahead. So you could understand them being a little cautious, especially down the stretch here, to make sure that they don't lose any more ridings and or lose any ridings in Saskatchewan. But considering the fact that neither Poilievre nor Carney nor Jagmeet Singh from the NDP came to Regina, you can only assume that these ridings are pretty much safe for the Conservatives, John.
Yeah, I found it very interesting. Like, no one showed up in Regina for the
capital,
leaders.
For crying out loud, right?
Yeah, and that kind of tells you kind of where the national campaigns are at in terms of where they think they can make inroads and where the battlegrounds really are. And I found it quite interesting that was the decision not to stage any events in Regina at all, really, in the campaign.
Yeah, and kind of disappointing to a large extent. But at the same time, I mean, that's just the way sometimes politics works. They only had 35 days, which was that's the minimum legal length of a campaign. But most parties don't like to go much longer than that either, for the same sort of reasons. You don't want to be more times you put yourself out in the public, the more likely you're going to take a hit of some kind. So you want to be careful. So we've talked about two ridings, one in Saskatoon, one in Regina, but the other one that we identified as a key riding was up north. And you tell me, I mean, we had, you go ahead.
Yeah, well, Desnesi, Mississippi, Churchill River is the northern riding, and that has been a traditional swing riding for many years.
Like a weather vane.
It has swung between Conservatives to, the Liberals have held it before, the NDP have held it before, and it's usually been a tight race. The last 5 years, it's been held by Gary Vidal, the former mayor of Meadow Lake. He's from Meadow Lake, and because of the boundary changes, Meadow Lake is no longer part of the riding now.
That's right. So, they have their own riding now.
Yeah. Yep. So he decided that he was going to call it quits and not run again. And so that seat is an open seat. And Jim LeMaig is running for the Conservatives, trying to hold it for the Conservatives.
Yep.
But he is facing a challenge there from the Liberals, from
Buckley
Belanger, who is running once again. He's also a former MLA.
Yep.
Was the MLA for Athabasca before LeMaig became MLA for Athabasca. And now they're facing each other in that particular riding, and it's going to be an interesting one to watch tonight for sure.
And the fun thing but the interesting thing is, and you hit the nail on the head when you talked about how this riding can be such a weather vane. There's only three candidates: a Liberal, a Conservative, and a New Democrat. That's it. There's no Green, there's no PPC, there's nothing else. It's just those three. So this should be very interesting to see. And I mean, Buckley Belanger is a name that people recognize up there, of course. Even Doug Racine as well. I mean, this is almost like these guys are all well known, mostly known in the community. So it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out in the vote.
Yeah. We actually have our first results from there just coming in.
Perfect.
Only one poll reporting. 28 votes for Buckley Belanger, 22 for Jim LeMaig, and 6 for Doug Racine.
So we're about 25 seconds from the Environment Canada. Shows you it's been a long day in the news business today, right? The Elections Canada webpage is going to refresh in just a few seconds, so we'll just wait for that, and then I'll give you those updated numbers that are about to pop up. But right now, it's so far the Liberals are ahead across the country, and but there's still a long way to go, and so many seats in Quebec and so many seats in Ontario. That really need to, it's really hard to predict. It's almost impossible to predict this one through tea leaves and and through polls. All right, here's the latest numbers we have now from Elections Canada. 73 for the Liberals, leading or elected across the country. 51 for the Conservatives. These are seats. This isn't a percentage. These are the seats leading or elected. 51 for the Conservatives, 10 for the Bloc, 1 for the NDP, but no others independent or Green at this point. Of course, the Greens, more we'll see on the West Coast, where one of their ridings is, and of course they have one in Quebec as well. So far we have a total of 135 ridings heard from out of 343, so we still have some ways to go as we go forward with this. Throughout the night tonight, we also have reporters who are going to be joining us. We have Doug Faulkner, who's down in Yorkton, is Doug ready with us now, Curtis? Just going to double check. Doug, how are things in that riding tonight? And now that the polls are closed, are you seeing any numbers or anything yet?
Nothing so far yet, Andrew. There's been no numbers in as of yet. Of course, we have 5 candidates running here, including the incumbent is Kathy Wagenthal, the Conservative here. And of course, she's been here since 2015. She took over from Gary Breitkreitz, who was our Member of Parliament for a very long time. And actually, the seat has only really changed parties a couple of times. So since I think it was 1968 to 1993, it was an NDP seat. And then ever since 2003, it's been here in the Conservative territory, whether it be Reform or otherwise. So Kathy Wagenthal is the incumbent. She is expected to win tonight, but of course there are 4 other candidates, including Valerie Brooks from the Green Party. She's a professional educator, and she holds a Master of Education degree. So she's very well educated and is from, I believe, that Saltcoats area, which is in our area here. There's also a Libertarian Party candidate here. Alec Guggenmoss is here. He's a 6-year resident of the Yorkton-Melville constituency and a lifelong Prairie boy. And so he's running for the Libertarian Party in Yorkton-Melville. Luc Gamond is the Liberal Party of Canada candidate here. Now, he grew up in Regina and attended Campion College at the University of Regina, where he got his Bachelor of Arts in Honors in Political Science and a minor in French. And it looks like he's actually been working in Ottawa for the last few years, so he is well versed with the Liberal policies in Ottawa. Michaela Krakowetz is the New Democratic Party of Canada candidate here. And she says that she's looking for solutions to the affordability crisis and the impacts of Trump's tariffs, if, of course, they do follow through. She was born in Saskatoon and raised in Lintlaw, which is in the Yorkton-Melville constituency as well. So those are the 5 candidates running here, at least in the Yorkton-Melville riding. And, of course, we will also be following the Dauphin-Swan River Marquette riding, which is what it used to be called. Now it's called Riding Mountain. And there are 5 candidates running there as well, including the incumbent Conservative Party of Canada MP Dan Major. He was elected in 2015 and then re-elected in 2021. He has competitors in the form of Liz Clayton, who is with the Green Party of Canada, Terry Hayward with the Liberal Party of Canada, Andrew Maxwell with the NDP, and Jim Oliver from the People's Party of Canada. So that's kind of what we're watching. The Riding Mountain constituency in Manitoba and the Yorkton-Melville constituency here in Saskatchewan, they're kind of mirror images of each other, and the only thing really dividing them is the boundary line between Saskatchewan and Manitoba.
Doug, thanks very much for joining us. I really appreciate that. We'll hear from you again in about a half hour or so, and we'll get some more updates, not only from the Yorkton-Melville region, but also we want to keep an eye for our listeners and viewers in Manitoba as well, just to let them know how things are shaping up in Western Manitoba as we continue our countdown towards some numbers. Did you want to go through the next little batch here, sir?
Yeah, I'll update the national numbers right now. The Liberals now at 83. Conservatives 55, Bloc 12, NDP 1. And that's what we have for national numbers. And I have some more numbers from Saskatchewan. Okay. And 4 ridings have results in, and 3 of them are leads for the Conservatives. We talked about Rosemary Falk basically declared elected now in Battleford's Lloydminster Meadow Lake with 82% of the vote now. Mm-hmm. Carlton Trail Eagle Creek, very early returns, about 5 polls reporting in 83% of the vote for Kelly Block of the Conservatives there. And Souris Moose Mountain has reported in, and let me just call up those numbers as well. And we're looking at 88% of the vote for Stephen Bonk, the Conservative candidate there, with about 6 polls reporting out of over 200. So there's
So
no surprises really there. And Buckley Boulanger, he was leading and then he was trailing. Now he's back in the lead in that riding. So
I was just about to point that out to you, because the Liberals are leading or elected in 1 riding in Saskatchewan, and that's obviously it. The Conservatives are leading or elected in 4, and we're waiting to hear from some more of them right now. Quite a number of votes still to come in, but in the other ridings, the Conservatives seem to be well ahead. So we'll have to keep an eye on that as we continue to check out these numbers as they come in tonight. So again, 85 Liberals, 63 Conservatives, 13 Bloc Québécois, 1 NDP. That's leading or elected so far tonight. And we're just 30 minutes in since the polls closed here in Saskatchewan. By the way, just for me, I mean, I know you voted in an advance poll.
That's right.
I voted today in my riding, and it was one of these things. I usually vote in the advance poll, and I just missed it. I was busy, and I didn't get a chance to get out there, and I was worried I'd be standing in long lines and so on and so forth. I just want to give a quick shout out to all the Election Canada workers tonight. I was at a number of polling stations for a number of different reasons, and everywhere I went, I met people who were fantastic. They were helpful. They were friendly. They were cheerful. And just, hats off to all the people who work at these polling stations just to make our election a little easier for all of us to do. So for all you out there, thank you very much for that. I just really impressed again with those folks. So as we approach the top of the hour, we're now just about to pass 8 o'clock. We are half an hour since the polls closed in Saskatchewan, and still, of course, well short of declaring anybody a winner. 343 seats is what we have up for grabs. 172 is the magic number to reach a majority, which we haven't been able to do with the federal government in the last couple of elections. And the people tonight are speaking and deciding whether or not there will be a majority awarded, whether it's be to the Conservatives, whether it be to the Liberals, what kind of role will the NDP play. The Bloc Québécois in this, John, is very interesting because obviously they only run in Quebec, and either party, Liberal or Conservative, they need those Quebec votes, those Quebec ridings, if they want to form government. Do you see a lot of change in the attitude towards the Bloc because they surged in the last election? Will they surge out just as quickly?
That's kind of what we want to find out tonight.
No, it's all right. Continue.
Okay, we're getting some chatter back there with our crew here. But that's kind of what we want to find out tonight is what's going to be the reaction in Quebec, whether or not the Bloc is going to be able to hold most of their seats, and we'll find more out as the evening unfolds.
Well, and we saw them dial up the separation rhetoric towards the end of the campaign, especially the last 2-3 weeks of the campaign. They're saying, hey, we want to have another referendum and blah, blah, blah. I mean, that, of course, in a time of high patriotism in Canada, probably not the best time to decide to have that type of situation. We need to pause for a moment for station identification. You are watching Canada Votes 2025 on SASKTODAY.ca.
This is 620 CKRM Regina, the voice of Saskatchewan, a Harvard media station, streaming everywhere at 620CKRM.com.
And good evening, and welcome back to Canada Votes 2025 on SASKTODAY.ca. My name is Andrew Dawson. We are firmly ensconced in the studios of Harvard Media here in Regina, and we are continuing to bring you the results of the 45th Canadian General Election. We already talked about 44, but let's look at 45. And most importantly, let's have a look at some of the numbers we're seeing, because they are starting to come in and they are starting to aggregate. For example, the latest number I have right now, the Liberals are leading or elected. This is, of course, nationwide. The Liberals are leading or elected in 94 ridings. The Conservatives at 68. The Bloc Québécois at 13. The NDP at 1, but we haven't really hit any of their strongholds around Montreal, Toronto, some of those places yet. And 0 for the others. So no Greens, no Independents so far. So 94 for the Liberals, 68 for the Conservatives, 13 for the Bloc Québécois as we continue. The magic number again, 172, because there are 343 seats available in the House of Commons in this election, up from 338. And that's a massive part of the change in the population numbers as we jump from 30 million, 33 million Canadians to over 40 million Canadians in just the last few years. So that's why you're seeing more seats set up and some more adjusting of districts and where population centers are. So again, 343, 172 is the magic number. John, are we seeing anybody get close to that number yet?
Not yet.
No.
I'm just looking at the Quebec numbers. We were talking about Quebec just a moment ago, and this is what's happening in Quebec right now. 31 for the Liberals, 15 for the Bloc, 6 for the Conservatives in Quebec. And in terms of popular vote there, 42.1% for the Liberals, 34.4% for the Bloc, 19.6% for the Conservatives. And that's where we're at in Quebec. Let me tell you about Ontario as well. Numbers I had were 41 for the Liberals, 29 for the Conservatives.
Wow.
Leading or elected. Actually, here's an update now. 42 for the Liberals, 31 for the Conservatives.
And that's
so it's just changed in Ontario.
In Ontario alone.
Yeah.
And the overall numbers have just changed. So let's bring those to you right now if we can. 99 Liberals leading or elected. The Conservatives at 76. The Bloc Québécois at 15. The NDP have picked up another seat. There's 2. So that's probably, we're seeing some of that as we get further west now through the Maritimes, and we're now into Quebec and Ontario, and we're starting to see those numbers come into play. So again, 15 for the Bloc, 2 for the NDP. So still a long way to go. That number 172 gets you a majority, which wouldn't that, John, make more sense in the government? Would you rather have a majority as a voter, or would you rather have a minority where everybody's got to kind of play nice to make everything work?
Well, a lot of people would want a minority because that holds people accountable. Because if you've got a majority, that party's going to be in for 4 years.
Yeah.
And if it's the party you didn't vote for, it's going to be 4 very long years. Right?
Exactly, yeah, for sure.
And, these numbers right now, I mean, if this trend keeps up, I mean, the Liberals could be heading for a majority here. I mean, looking at these numbers.
But, we haven't hit some of the strong conservative strongholds in Ontario yet, although you gave us some of those numbers there a minute ago. But out west, I mean, Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC, and when I say BC, I'm talking about outside of the Vancouver, Victoria area, mostly the rural areas of British Columbia, some of the larger centers as well, like Kamloops, Prince George, places like that. But we'll see a lot of conservatives in there. But the question is can the Liberals have a wide enough gap before they hit the blue wall out here in the West?
Right. Just to let everyone know, the BC results are just starting to trickle in now.
Yeah, their polls just closed.
They close their polls at the top of the hour, so we're just getting the first results in from BC, so we're still waiting for those to give some clarity to the whole picture here and in determining whether there's going to be a minority or a majority government here.
We're going to hear a little bit from one of our reporters, Martin Oldhughes, in about 25 minutes or so. He is at Andrew Scheer's conservative gathering tonight here in Regina, and we'll hopefully hear from Mr. Scheer as well if we get a moment. If he gets a moment to join us, that would be fantastic. But let's talk a little bit now, John, about the campaign itself, which, as we talked about off the top of the show, again in December, this was done for the Conservatives, which there's no wonder they were driving so hard to the hoop to try to get an election called. They were way out in front. And they got what they wanted. But again, this is another one of those case studies in be careful what you wish for, you might get it. Because as the dominoes started to fall and Donald Trump started making his threats against Canada, this entire election changed on a dime. And the Liberals changed their leader and didn't change their message too much, but they changed their leader. The Conservatives, though, didn't really seem to adapt to that change, that how the sands had shifted in those 2 months.
Yeah, there's a lot of grumbling in conservative circles about the Conservatives should have pivoted and addressed the Trump issue much more forcefully than they did and get into the news cycle. I think that was kind of the issue there, is that the Liberals were able to talk about the tariff issue and talk about Trump and get on TV every opportunity they possibly could. And Trudeau in his final months, those were some of his best moments, as it turned out. Like, he ended up his tenure kind of on a high note compared to some of the low points that he had been in for a long, long time.
And unfortunately, especially from a Western perspective, there were an awful lot of low points. I mean, he's never been popular here.
Right.
Just the name Trudeau, going back to his father, he's never been popular here, right?
That's right.
But he made the decision, rightly or wrongly, agree or disagree, doesn't matter. He made the decision to, I think he was assisted towards that decision as well. But and then along came Mark Carney, and everything changed. And it just didn't feel like the Conservatives adapted to the new reality. It's like they continued the same game plan. When they changed games, they weren't playing tiddlywinks anymore. They were playing a dice game. Do you know what I mean? Like, everything had changed, and they didn't really seem to make that adaptation here. That probably wasn't such a big deal, but in places like Ontario and in Quebec and in Atlantic Canada, they just didn't seem to really make that game plan difference, and I think that might cost them tonight, potentially anyway.
Yeah, the campaign, they started to pick up steam late in the campaign when Trump was less of an issue, and then they were able to get back to issues that they've been talking about for the last couple of years, such as affordability, the affordability issue, and housing and crime and issues that have been that they've been focusing on for before the election.
Yeah.
But the Trump issue, I mean, just today Trump interjected himself into the Canadian campaign on social media, and that's annoyed a lot of people. What's
really funny is if you haven't seen his tweet, his post on Truth Social, that's where he put it. It was on his own social media platform. He basically talked about how Canadians should vote for someone who's going to cut their taxes, increase their military. He was basically saying himself. He does realize, though, he's not on the ballot here, John, right? He understands he's not on the ballot here in Canada?
I don't know if he understands that at all, really.
Well, it's to be honest, I mean, can you name a president who has had more comments and more things to say that have impacted a Canadian election?
Yeah.
I don't remember FDR doing that to Mackenzie King. I don't remember, you go back to the days, it's unheard of to have this kind of, I don't know if interference is the right word, but certainly, making some of the comments he's making are almost irresponsible.
Donald Trump making a bid to become president of Canada.
See, this is the aspect of this we haven't talked about. Why should we be talking about becoming the 51st state when we should make them the 14th province? Wouldn't that be easier? That would be. They're a lot smaller. No? Okay. Let's give you some more updates as the Elections Canada page has just rolled over here, and we'll give you some new numbers. Leading or elected, the Liberals at 127, the Conservatives at 89. The Bloc Québécois, 16. And again, this is leading or elected. And the NDP with 2. No Green Party, no PPC yet, or at least not leading or elected in any of the ridings. And again, the magic number is 172. And I've never been good at math, John, but the Liberals are 45 short of that number.
We're keeping an eye on it, and the numbers keep on climbing here. But right now, the Liberals are in the lead, and it is a total right now that is higher than the combined total of the opposition, which is where you want to be.
Exactly. I mean, you don't want to be in a minority situation either way, but I am sure that there are some people who are listening to these numbers tonight that aren't happy with the outcome so far.
Well,
but you don't know. There's still a long way to go.
I'm sure there's a lot of our listeners in the rural area who are not happy with the numbers based on the results that are coming in.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Because the numbers that we're seeing a lot more numbers coming in now.
Yep.
And
fast and furious here.
And maybe I could mention a few of those.
Please.
So we mentioned Rosemary Falk and Battleford's Lloydminster for the Conservatives elected there. Cassie Wagenthal in Yorkton Melville. 83% of the vote, and we're seeing some projections that she's been returned there in Yorkton Melville for the Conservatives. Stephen Bonk, the former MLA, has been elected for the first time to Parliament based on the numbers out of Souris Moose Mountain. He's getting around 86% of the vote so far. Early returns in Moose Jaw Lake Centre Lanigan. Fraser told me 70% of the vote there. Just 5 polls reporting in. And taking a look at Swift Current, Grasslands, Kindersley, Jeremy Patzer, 80% of the vote there, 4 polls reporting in. So these are early numbers, but dominating numbers.
And we can tell you that as of 13 minutes ago, all the polls across the country are now closed. So we are counting in every single province. Those of you who have snow on the roof, like yours truly and my co-host here, are old enough to remember the days when, for example, if you were in BC on election night, by the time your news started, when the polls closed there at 8 o'clock local, that's 11 o'clock in Toronto, usually it's over in about 10 minutes. The broadcasts are not very long because they come on, they say, here's the result. Because, of course, you had to blackout. We couldn't have these results. Elections Canada in the modern day now has polls closing all within an hour, basically, coast to coast, which makes this a lot easier. It makes it a lot more open and transparent for people, too, as you can get these results immediately. But back in the day, 30 years ago, you weren't able to do that. You weren't able to get those numbers. So one of the other ridings we want to check on, and we'll check on in a little bit, is Pierre Poilievre's riding, Ottawa-Carleton, I think it is, right?
Carleton, yeah. It's an Ottawa area riding. For sure.
I mean, there was a lot of talk, and I think a lot of people were putting it down to wishful thinking, but they were saying that he was in trouble in his seat. And he spent a little time there, and I think maybe even a little more time there than he wanted to. But we'll get those numbers up to you as we track those down. But that's another riding we're keeping an eye on tonight. And, of course, Mark Carney, a rookie MP. He's never sat in the House of Commons. He's never run an election before. So should be interesting to see how he performs in his riding tonight.
We do not have any numbers in from Carleton yet. Carleton had kind of the issue there where you had... who knows how many people were on the ballot in Carleton? So many that I lost track, like 50 or so. Or
it's funny because somebody told me that. They said there's upwards of 15 or 16 people on the ballot. And I'm just like how many ballots are they going to have to print for this thing? They're going to have to be, the ballots are going to be like one of those checks on The Price is Right. I mean, they're going to be like this big,
right?
To try and fill it all out. I mean, there was a number of people jumping onto that Poilievre riding, I think just more or less to put their name in there. But that's an awful lot of candidates to have to whittle through.
Yeah, but speaking of leaders who could be in trouble or whatever, like if you listen to everyone on the campaign trail, it's like every leader of every party is in trouble, kind of a thing, right? And that's kind of the chatter on social media. But the leaders to really watch out for, I think, is Jagmeet Singh and Elizabeth May out in BC. They are rumored to be in a heap of trouble and may have trouble holding their seats tonight.
To be fair to Elizabeth May, she's been kind of in and out and up and down in terms of being a leader of the Green Party and out and all that kind of stuff, but she is still very popular in her Vancouver Island area riding. Jagmeet Singh in Burnaby, British Columbia as well. I agree with you. I think he's in trouble tonight. But we do have some breaking news from the Canadian Press. The Canadian Press decision desk is predicting a Liberal government. It's not saying what kind of Liberal government, but the Canadian Press just issued this moments ago. They're predicting a Liberal government under Mark Carney. That's a pretty bold decision considering we're not even halfway through, just a little over halfway through getting some numbers in here, John.
Yeah, but it makes total sense that they'd make that projection given the numbers that we've been seeing and how it's turning out so far.
Well, when you see the Liberals about 50.8% of the vote and the Conservatives at 38.5%, those are the two alarming numbers right there.
Yeah.
Those would give you some pause if you're at Conservative Party headquarters tonight. But there's still a long way to go. We'll just give you some quick numbers that I have right in front of me. The race right now looks like this. The Liberals, 95 seats. No, sorry, it just changed right in front of me, so I'll give you a new number. The Liberals, and this is probably what CP just based their prediction on, are at 133. So they're only 38, 39 votes short of majority. Conservatives have 93. The Bloc Québécois 17. The NDP 3. They are not performing. They were the third party and probably would have been the third party, but maybe the fourth party after the Bloc. But you've got to ask yourself if they're going to get wiped out tonight, John.
They are in deep trouble right now. In terms of the popular vote, they're only at 4.4% of the popular vote across Canada to this point. So that is a horrific showing so far.
And we have to give a special shout out to Curtis Gammon, who is the gentleman running all our digital and our graphics here for us tonight. He's popping these numbers into our graphics and getting them up in front of you almost as quick as we're saying it. So hats off to him. As a matter of fact, and he just pointed to me to let me know the provincial breakdown, leading or elected. So remember, there are 14 ridings in Saskatchewan. Okay, they're all Conservative blue. But right now, the Conservatives are leading in 9 of those ridings. The Liberals are leading in 2 of those ridings.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a surprise. 1, yes, but 2 would be kind of surprising.
And the other one where they're leading is Saskatoon University, which we talked about earlier tonight.
It's almost like we're I don't know, we're prescient. We seem to know what we're talking about, John.
Yeah. But it's still too early to call in Saskatoon University. I think it was the Liberals were leading like by 1 vote or something like that. I'd have to check to see if there's any updated numbers, but it's still early returns, and there's still a number of ridings that we have not heard from in Saskatchewan yet, and they're mainly the urban ridings.
Yes.
Yeah, in Saskatoon and Regina.
Now, for those of you listening, we'll have Doug Falconer joining us again in the next few minutes, and he'll give us an update not only from Yorkton, but also from the Manitoba perspective as well. And we have reporter Martin Oldhughes, who's with Conservatives, with Andrew Scheer, and predominantly just behind that, so everybody knows we're not singling out Scheer as riding, but it's because it's Andrew Scheer. He's the most senior Conservative cabinet minister in the country. Speaking of which, I bumped into our Senator Denise Batters today.
Oh,
at the polling station.
That's interesting.
She was, which was very strange, but it was good to see the senator from Saskatchewan. Always happy to see Senator Denise Batters. So, John, as we're looking at these numbers, 133 Liberal, 93 Conservative, they're dancing with the potential to get to a majority with this number now.
They're looking good at this point in time. The BC numbers are going to tell the tale, the final tale.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah.
They may be the kingmakers tonight, but I got a feeling just with that number where it is now, by the time we get to BC, at least we'll know for sure which party is going to form government. We're just not sure what kind of government, whether it's a minority or a majority. So there's still a long way to go. 133 Liberals, 93 Conservatives, 17 BQ, and you were giving me a thumbs up, so I'll just ask you why. You're good. Perfect. Thank you very much. Sorry. I just wanted to make sure I was throwing to the right element and making sure. So we do have Doug Falconer joining us from the GX94 newsroom in Yorkton. Doug, first of all, before you tell me about the numbers in Yorkton and you tell me about the numbers in Manitoba, looking at the numbers in front of you and the numerous elections you've covered, are you surprised by this number right now?
I'm not really surprised considering the polling that was taking place over the last 2-3 weeks. You can't always believe the polling because I think a lot of people lie when they get pointed out who they're going to vote for. I know don't know if I would give a pollster my vote. I wouldn't tell them who I was voting for because I'm not that kind of person. I believe in a secret ballot. But I guess I'm not overly surprised, and I figured it was either going to be a majority government either way, and it's starting to look like it's going to be a Liberal majority the way the numbers are coming in right now.
Yeah, Doug? So, boy, it's again, and CP, as we just reported, I don't know if you heard us a few minutes ago, CP is already calling a Liberal government. They're not saying what kind yet, but they are saying that they're predicting a Liberal government. How are things looking in Western Manitoba right now?
In the Riding Mountain constituency, which of course borders Yorkton, Melville, the Conservative incumbent there, Dan Major, is well in the lead. He has 58.9% of the popular vote with 20 out of 250 polls reporting, so that's 8%. He has 2,937 votes. The next person is the Liberal, Terry Hayward, has 1,451. So he has exactly double the amount of votes of the second place candidate at the moment. So I think it's pretty safe to say that Dan Major is going to be re-elected as the Conservative Member of Parliament for Riding Mountain in Manitoba. And of course, on the other side of the boundary, of course, is Yorkton Melville. And our Conservative incumbent here, Kathy Wagenthal, an even bigger lead. She has 83.9% of the popular vote right now, with 23 out of 212 polls reporting. So that's about 11% of the polls. And I mean, she has over 1,800 votes. Second place is the Liberal with 220 votes. So it's not even close. Kathy Wagenthal definitely reelected in Yorkton, Melville, and I think it's pretty safe to say that Dan Major has been reelected in Riding Mountain.
All right, Doug, thanks very much. Really appreciate your input and appreciate your what you're seeing out there. Thanks very much. We'll talk to you again in half an hour.
Sounds good.
That's Doug Faulkner, the news director at GX94 Radio in Yorkton, giving us a perspective there. My name is Andrew Dawson, along with John Cairns. You are watching vote coverage of Canada Votes 2025 on SASKTODAY.ca, and we're broadcasting from the studios of CKRM 620 here in Regina, and it is great to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us. The latest numbers, again, that we have in terms of overall national count, 133 Liberals leading or elected in 133 ridings. The Conservatives at 93. The Bloc Québécois at 17, the NDP at 3, and that's where we're at. Now, the vote so far, right on the money, is 50% Liberal, 38.7% Conservative, 4.8% Bloc Québécois, but again, of course, they're limited to just the province of Quebec. And the NDP polling at about the same number that the Bloc is, about 4.4%, as we continue to look at some of these ridings. Looking at the Regina Qu'Appelle riding, I just called this one up in front of me here just to get a look at how things are going there. Andrew Scheer, with very few polls reporting, only one of 211 so far, out to an early lead with 101 votes, or 84.9% of the vote. I think that's kind of a high total, in terms of vote percentage. But Rahima Mian, it only has 11 votes, but again, that was from one polling station. There are still 210 of them to hear from so far. About 64,777 elected or registered electors in that region as well, in that riding. So a very interesting number as we see this coming forward. But I think around Regina, the Conservatives are probably fine. Maybe Mr. Cram's riding, maybe, but probably not. But up in Saskatoon, that's where we might see maybe one and maybe two ridings possibly flip.
Possibly. It's very early still, and we want to be cautious about the trends we're seeing in Saskatoon at this point in time.
For sure.
But, we'll have to keep an eye on Saskatoon and Regina as well to find out how the trend is looking there. But I have some of the provincial numbers here in terms of the popular vote, and the Conservatives are just dominating the popular vote at this early stage, and these are mostly rural votes that are in, but 77% of the vote so far, and the Liberals running second with 15%. So that's I find that interesting, and the NDP at 5.6% so far, and that's really unheard of for Saskatchewan. You expect the NDP to do much better than that, even in rural Saskatchewan.
Well, and here, you just brought it up. So let's jump into this here real quick before we get into some other things, because this is something I did want to ask you about. In the last provincial election, we saw the NDP make some big inroads. We saw them pick up a whole bunch more seats. We saw them pick up more around the cities and a little bit in the rural areas, but they just couldn't get through that green wall, that Sask Party green wall, to form government. Are we going to see some of those numbers we saw in the provincial election towards the NDP or left of center? Are we going to see those trend towards the Liberals, or do you think those will stay at home and they'll still vote Conservative?
Well, I think that it's kind of a mix, because some of those, like, there's ticket splitting going on, and some of the people who voted NDP provincially might vote Conservative federally, based on the issues and the personalities and so on. But what we are really seeing from the NDP is that at the federal level in this campaign, I mean, the organization has not been there.
No.
I mean, here in Regina, we had candidates who weren't even selected to be on the ballot until 2 weeks into the campaign. You didn't even know who the candidate was for the NDP. So that tells you quite a bit about their level of organization for this campaign here in Saskatchewan. And I am not expecting the NDP to have a good showing in Saskatchewan tonight. It's a real sea change compared to the provincial election, when
without a doubt
you saw orange signs everywhere in Regina during the provincial election. Yeah. And here, maybe I've seen like 3 or 4. That's been about it. Yeah. And that tells the story right there.
Yeah, for sure. And, as you look at the position the federal NDP were in under Jagmeet Singh. They were propping up an unpopular government, but they didn't want the Conservatives to get that earlier election. I mean, they could have called it, back in November, really, if they wanted to. And for the Liberals, probably a good thing they didn't, but considering the changes that came after that. But, it was a very difficult position politically to be in. And whether he played it right, obviously, this is what we're going to get tonight. The report card on the politicians is essentially what we're going to see. But clearly, what he was looking at, whatever it was he was trying to achieve, it didn't work out for him. For Jagmeet Singh, I'm saying. Yeah. Propping up an unpopular government.
I think the lesson to be learned here is don't prop up the Liberals. We have seen this before. I mean, here in Saskatchewan, remember back in, when Roy Romano had that deal with the Liberal Party where the Liberals propped up the NDP for 4 years.
Yeah.
And then in the following election, the Liberals really paid the price, and they got thrown right out of the legislature, got no seats in that one. And that tends to happen to, the third party if they prop up a government. And this is kind of history repeating itself, because back in the 70s when David Lewis and the NDP propped up Pierre Trudeau and the Liberals.
That's right.
They paid for it in the 74 election.
They sure did.
In a big way.
Yeah. And it took them years to recover from that, too.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, for sure. So, again, just looking at the numbers, we're just going to actually wait 25 seconds here. But we've got Martin Oldhughes, who's our reporter here in Regina. Before we give you those numbers, let's jump over to Martin real quick. Martin, you're down at the Seven Oaks where Andrew Scheer is gathered with Conservative supporters here in Regina. Are you getting any sense of how they're feeling about the numbers?
Yeah, Andrew, I'm here at the Seven Oaks Motel currently, and honestly, there wasn't really much disappointment. Obviously, there was a few sad faces as many of the Conservative supporters saw that the Liberals were calling for at least the government. But I think a lot of supporters here are still confident in Andrew Scheer. So far, it's early in the polls, but he is leading by 70%. So there is some hope, at least in Saskatchewan. It looks like most, if not all, of Saskatchewan is going to be Conservative again. Obviously, still a disappointment that the Liberals are going to maintain a government, but I think some people are at least happy. At least there's a direction that the Conservatives have gained a little bit in Canada, and I think that's a hope for many people here.
Martin, thanks very much. And if you get a chance to talk to Mr. Scheer tonight, I'm very curious to hear what his thoughts are on how this election campaign has unfolded and how just tonight has unfolded. But Martin, thanks very much for joining us. We'll check in with you again in a little bit. That's Martin Oldhughes, our reporter from SASKTODAY.ca, who's at Conservative Party headquarters, or I guess Andrew Scheer, his gathering tonight at the hotel here in Regina, at the Seven Oaks Hotel here in Regina on Albert Street. So we'll check back in with Martin, and we'll hear from Doug Falconer again in just a little bit as well in the next half hour as he gets us up to date with what we're seeing in Yorkton. But we are seeing a bit of a shift in the numbers, just a tiny bit. They're about to refresh here in a few seconds, so we'll just wait a sec. So that way I don't have to give them to you twice. I only have to give them to you once as the number counts down. Yeah, you see, this kind of keeps changing. The Liberals, just so you know, at dissolution, when the House was dissolved at the start of the campaign, the Liberals had 152 seats. They are leading or elected in 151 seats right now. So they're one short of where they were at dissolution of the House. The Conservatives are exactly where they were at the dissolution of the House, 120 seats. The Bloc Québécois at 23, that's a drop of 10. And the NDP at 7, and that's down considerably. But of course, there's a lot of ridings out west yet that we still, need to hear from. As the total number we've heard from so far is 301, and we need to hear from a total of 348. And a majority is made at 172. And John, I'm looking at these numbers, and the only way the Conservatives are going to do that is if they run the table in the West and pull back some of these numbers that we're seeing under the Liberal banner to start with.
Yeah, I think right now the question is whether the Liberals get a majority or a minority, and They are on knife's edge at the moment.
Yeah, they are.
And it's like even Steven just about.
What I'm noticing as well is the percentage of vote, the popular vote, slowly starting to drop for the Liberals. Remember in the last 20 minutes I was telling you it was 51, then 50%. It's down to 47.5. And the Conservatives have climbed from about 30% up to almost 40%. So, we're seeing maybe some more of these conservative numbers will start popping up on here on the list, but we are again at 303 total. As you can see in front of you, 151 Liberal, 120 Conservative, 100. My apologies. That's 23 for the Bloc Québécois and 7 for the NDP. If there were 123 for the Bloc Québécois, that would be a bit of a concern across this country. But yeah, 23 for the Bloc Québécois right now. We're seeing the Bloc take a bit of a hit in Quebec so far, John.
Yeah.
And that's what the Liberals were hoping for. That was going to be their help tonight, would be if they could get some of those ridings back in Quebec that they lost to the Bloc just a few short years ago. So we keep searching that one. And what is it you're digging out right now? As I
am looking at some of the numbers in Saskatchewan, and we have some urban returns coming in.
Okay.
And the urban returns are looking good for the Conservatives. Taking a look at... I'm having trouble calling them up right now, but the Conservatives have taken the lead in Regina Capel with Andrew Scheer. Michael Cram has taken the lead in Regina Wascana. Warren Steinley is in the lead in Regina Louvain. And up in Saskatoon South, Kevin Lavoie is in the lead there. And Corey Tucker has taken the lead now in Saskatoon University. So we're still waiting to hear from Saskatoon West.
Yeah, they're taking a little while to get some numbers out to us tonight. And again, as you pointed out, Andrew Scheer well out in front here in Regina Capel with only 5 of 211 polls reporting, but he has 379 votes to Rahima Mayen's 106 votes of the Liberal Party. The NDP's Chris Simi at 40, and Dion Feller with the People's Party of Canada at only 12. But again, that's only a few of the polls that are in so far. But, provincially, with 14 seats, we kind of see how things are going to go. Maybe one might turn Liberal, but we're not seeing that quite yet. But it's the national numbers that are really coming into focus now, as we're up to 305 ridings being heard from now. 153 Liberal, 122 Conservative, 23 Bloc Québécois, 7 NDP. So my math, which is never good, tells me the Liberals are 1 vote ahead right now in a majority.
Yeah.
When you add those all up of the 305, because 122 Conservatives, 23 Bloc Québécois gets you to 148, actually 155. So they're a little under that number that they need, and the pace they need to be at if they hope to get to 172, John.
Right. I have some numbers. I've been looking up the numbers for Regina Wascana. Michael Cram is in the lead there, but it's a close race by about 7% over Jeffrey Walters of the Liberal Party. So just 7 polls reporting in there so far. But that's going to be one that we're going to have to keep an eye on for sure. And Warren Steinley up, he has around 54% of the vote there. So the races are close, and we are seeing the Liberals in the cities running consistently in second place.
Yeah.
Like the NDP are just cratering in Regina Louvain, the NDP at 7.4% right now in the early vote, which is unheard of. Usually they're in contention to win.
Yes, they are.
And
especially in the major centers.
Right.
Yeah. Rural areas, not so much, but in the major centers, Regina, Saskatoon, larger population areas, they tend to have, they do tend to perform a little better. But when you talk about, the federal NDP and the Saskatchewan NDP, you are kind of talking little apples and oranges here, but at the same time, with the name being the same, they share each other's fate. And I guess the bump that the provincial NDP saw in the provincial isn't translating into helping the NDP this time around.
No, it seems to have gone over to the Liberals, and I'm looking at the numbers in Saskatoon now, and the NDP are just not doing well at all. Yeah. I mean, this is a historically bad showing for the NDP in Saskatchewan that we're seeing at the federal level, because they're at I'm looking at Saskatoon University, they're at 10%. And usually they'd be running in second place in that riding.
Yes.
And right now they're a distant third. They are not doing well at all.
So those numbers tell you then, or at least they're telling me, that the left of center vote isn't going to the NDP, it's going to the Liberals.
And in Saskatoon West, which is a seat where the NDP usually are either on the cusp of winning, and occasionally they do win it, they're in third place there too, with 19.5% of the vote. Brad Redekop, this is a tight one. I mean, Brad Redekop is in the lead there by about 7 votes.
That's very tight.
Over the Liberals. So that one, keep an eye on that one as the night unfolds, because right now it is on knife's edge.
And just again, 152 Liberal, 128 Conservative, 22 Bloc Québécois, 8 NDP. And here in Saskatchewan right now, it looks like 13 of 14 leading or elected, or 12 of 14 leading or elected for the Conservatives in Saskatchewan. At least that's what it was just a few minutes ago. So the numbers continuing to come in, and they're coming in fairly quickly, which is nice as well. The faster we get to 343, the better, I think, when we get to all the polls reporting in. So that tells me we're about 50 some odd short. So we are probably seeing some counts happening in BC, but these are just some late polls that must be, they're just getting their counts out. So we should be able to have some more probably before the top of the hour. We should know, I would think, what kind of government we're going to see here. John, right now the Liberals seem to be in the driver's seat, but there's still quite a ways to go and a whole lot of votes to count out west. But again, 152 for the Liberal Party of Canada. And here we are in Saskatchewan. Thanks, Curtis, for popping that up for us. Conservative 13 and Liberal 1. So like I said, leading or elected 13 Conservative, 1 Liberal, and still quite a ways to go. But that looks like, either 13 or 14 Conservatives probably in Saskatchewan. That seems probably how this might shape up. Just a couple of seats that are, still toss-ups at the moment, where the Liberals do have a chance to possibly pick up seats in the urban areas. But right now, Conservatives are leading everywhere except for the northern riding of Disnessy, Mississippi, Churchill River. And that's the only place where we're seeing a Liberal out in front, and that's Buckley Boulanger, correct?
Yeah. So. And the way things are looking, he could be the happiest man in Saskatchewan tonight at the end of the night, because he could be looking at a cabinet gig.
Well, I mean, as the lone Liberal in Saskatchewan, you would think so. Ralph Goodale, of course, was the lone Liberal here in Saskatchewan for a number of years, or at least one of two, but usually all by himself. Now the Canadian High Commissioner in London, Mr. Goodale is. That riding, too, is very interesting. Mr. Goodale's old riding after he lost in the last election. To see if some of that support that the Liberals had in that riding comes back. But you're not seeing that play out in the numbers yet, or are you?
Not yet, but it's still a close race, and Jeffrey Walters is running in second place there, and he's still in the hunt. So we're not throwing in the towel on that one for him. And certainly in Saskatoon, looking at the results there, the Conservatives are in the lead in all the ridings in Saskatoon, but 2 of them are really close, which tells me that the Liberal team on the Leaders Tour knew what they were doing when they booked Mark Carney to show up in Saskatoon a couple of times.
Well, and you hit the nail on the head. I mean, he made 2 visits there. Right. Poilievre was there once, I think.
He was there once, late in the campaign.
And Jagmeet Singh was there once as well.
That's right.
But you could see why the Liberals would want Mark Carney in there to try and see if they could peel a couple of those ridings. Obviously, they must have seen some numbers that showed them it was close, and you're seeing that play out here in the numbers you're getting in front of you.
Yeah, that's right.
Very interesting stuff. Again, when you talk about politics at this level, when it comes to campaign management and so on, I mean, it's not a science, but at the same time it is. And I would not have wanted to have been a strategist for either party in February, when all the sands started to shift in late January, early February, and we started to see the change in the electoral math here across the country, coast to coast. So again, remember when the Parliament was dissolved just 35 days ago, the Liberals had 152 seats. They now have 100. They are leading or elected in 155 seats. So they're starting now to exceed that total. But then again, so are the Conservatives. They're at 131 leading or elected, and at dissolution, they're at 120. So they're up 11 seats tonight. And their total vote, the percentage of the vote, the popular vote, is continuing to just sort of inch up a little bit, and the Liberals is kind of inching down a little bit. So that might keep the Liberals away from majority territory as we start to see more votes come in throughout Western Canada. But as we've seen here in Saskatchewan, in Alberta, where there's almost just as many ridings in Alberta, it's BC that has a lot of ridings.
Yeah.
And that'll be probably, as you said, John, that could be the decider in terms of majority or minority.
Yeah, and it could be the decider in terms of fates of several party leaders tonight, not the least of which is Jagmeet Singh, who's running there. Yeah, we're going to have to wait and see. And looking at these numbers, I mean, we could have a situation by the end of the night where the NDP are decimated.
Yeah.
And still in a position to prop up the Liberals as a government.
Yeah, with just enough votes to do it.
Because I'm looking at the numbers right now, like the Liberals, they've dipped below majority territory again. They're now back in the minority territory.
Yeah.
Was the NDP possibly in a position to prop them up, which is...
Even if they win 10 seats, that 10 seats could be all the difference
it could
in the world, right?
I mean, it boggles the mind, but that could be the situation. Right now... Liberals, we're looking at, my number says 157 for the Liberals, 131 for the Conservatives, 24 for the Bloc, 8 for the NDP. And that 157 plus 8 would give Mark Carney, a
little wiggle room.
A little wiggle room to get things passed in the House of Commons, and yeah.
But you see, so let's project this forward for a minute. And if you're Jagmeet Singh, and they're probably going to want a replacement as leader at the NDP, but then again, you don't want to replace a leader in a minority government situation too quickly either, because you need your NDP leader there in the House to make sure that if you're going to vote with the Liberals and prop them up, that it's for the appropriate things they want to do. So they won't have nearly as much power over the Liberals in terms of getting them to do stuff, but it'll be very interesting. I mean, pharmacare, some of the things we talked about, the dental care, these all came from the NDP. These are all things that they wanted done, and that was a condition of their supply agreement, as they called it, confidence and supply agreement with the Liberal government. But again, at 8 seats, not nearly as much power to direct the Liberals as they would have had just a few months ago.
I think the key here is to figure out what's going to actually happen to Jagmeet Singh in his own riding. If he wins... he may be tempted to stick around for a little while, and I very much doubt he's going to be running in another election.
Yeah.
But he may, stick it out for a few months while a leadership race to replace him goes on, or something like that. Mm-hmm. I very much doubt that he's going to stay on with these. I mean, the NDP numbers across the country are not good.
Well, we're going to check in a little bit here again with Doug Falconer in a few minutes, and we'll find out how things are going not only in Yorkton, Melville, but along the western border of Manitoba, and see how the ridings are making out there. But again, the numbers we have directly in front of us right now, leading or elected, and again, leading or elected is the number we're talking about: 156 Liberal, 133 Conservative, 24 Bloc Québécois, and 38 for the NDP. So the Bloc Québécois is down a bit. They've lost 8 seats so far. The Conservatives, though, are up a good number. They're up, looks like 14 by my math. And the Liberals are up just a scooch by 4 seats. But still, we still have another 20 or so ridings to hear from.
If the Liberals are just up 4 seats, that's not going to be enough for a majority.
Nope. No, I won't do it.
They need to get up by another 8 seats to get to a majority, and if they're only up 4, that's not enough.
Nope. And so we continue to wait for the result, and we continue to wait for the final answer. But right now, and again, we mentioned to you earlier that Canadian Press has already declared a Liberal government. We just don't know what kind. And if you look at these numbers, that's how they're trending. But there's still a lot of room in here for the Conservatives to make up that gap and really make things even more interesting in a minority situation or in a minority situation. But the Liberals at 159 now, the Conservatives at 133, the Bloc at 24, the NDP at 8. And again, John, as you hit on just a few minutes ago, that number is awfully low for the NDP.
Yeah, it sure is. And in terms of the popular vote, we're looking at under 5% at this point in time, which is, again, that's unheard of for the NDP. I mean, that's almost the story of this election for me, is that collapse of the NDP, because we're not seeing too much of a change for the other 3 parties, but the NDP number is way down.
Okay, and just thought I'd just have a quick peek at the riding of Carleton, the Ottawa area where Pierre Poilievre is. Liberal Bruce Fanjoy has 582 votes, or 57.1% of the vote. Pierre Poilievre, 405, or 39.7%. Now, I just got to get to the bottom here where it tells me how many. This is still very few polls of over 266 in the community that have been counted. So that one's still a long way from being done. But out the gate, that's a bit of a surprise to have the Liberal jump out ahead that quickly.
Yeah.
And again, in the national races, you can see on your screens in front of you, 159 Liberal, 133 Conservative, 24 Bloc Québécois, and 8 for the NDP. And we continue to keep an eye on some of these things. What do you have in front of you, John?
Just looking at the same numbers that you have. One item of note was that I noticed that Jeffrey Walters took the lead in Regina Wascana by about, 3 votes, according to the latest count.
Wow.
So that's a very tight one there. Let me just see if I can get that number again. Actually, he leads now by 33 votes.
All right.
So that's what's happening there. It's also tight for Warren Steinley in Regina Louvain, but he's ahead. Andrew Scheer well on his way in Regina Capel. And so far in Saskatoon, all 3 of the ridings in Saskatoon are leading Conservative.
Well, as we told you a minute ago, leader Pierre Poilievre currently behind in his riding, but only one poll has come in yet, so there's still a long way to go. However, we could probably give you a little bit more insight into how Nepean is shaking out, and that's Mark Carney's riding that he's running in. And he has 6,374 votes out of, that's 35 polls reporting, so that's a pretty good number of polls so far, or 64.2% of the vote. Conservative Barbara Ball is the follow-up there in second place with about half the votes at 33.1%. So if these trend forward, Mark Carney is going to win that seat fairly easily going ahead. Again, looking at Carleton, Bruce Fanjoy continuing to be ahead there, ahead of Pierre Poilievre, but still a ways to go with only a couple of the polls coming in, so we still have some more time with that. But the Liberals have jumped up now to 160, leading or elected. The Conservatives, 132, the NDP at 8, and the Bloc Québécois at 24. And are we ready to go to Doug? I'm sorry, I thought that's yours. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you very much. Hey, live. This is live, folks. Okay, this is how we do things. It's all live here. We've got Doug Faulkner joining us from the GX94 newsroom in Yorkton. Doug, not a surprise to see Mark Carney ahead in his riding, but a bit of a surprise to see the polls might have been true to see that Poilievre is trailing in his very early, but to see that he's trailing.
Yeah, and isn't that the riding where there's like a multitude of candidates running in that riding of Pierre Poilievre's? There was like a big long list, I think 60 or 80 or something like that. So, I mean, it'll take a while to go through those ballots. There's going to be a while for that one, I'm afraid. But closer to home here in the Yorkton-Melville constituency, Kathy Wagenthal leading the way very easily. She's, I'm sure, already been declared elected. She has 77.5% of the popular vote here, with just over 50% of the polls reporting. She has 12,307 votes. Second place right now is the Liberal, which is 2,278 votes for Luc Guimond. So she has a full 10,000 vote lead at the moment. And something that does surprise me a little bit is the Liberals running second in Yorkton-Melville. Liberals have never been very popular in this riding. Usually the NDP finishes a strong second in Yorkton-Melville, and right now it looks like Liberals will be finishing second. Same goes for Riding Mountain, of course, which is our neighboring constituency in Manitoba. That includes communities like Dauphin, Swan River, Roblin, Russell, Neepawa. In that riding as well, Conservative MP Dan Major looks to be re-elected. He has 64.6% of the popular vote right now, but that's only with 22% of polls reporting, but a very solid lead, well over 50% with all the other people's votes combined. He's got a nice lead, 7,326. The Liberal in second place there as well, Terry Hayward, with 2,800 votes. So looks like Conservatives will be winning in Riding Mountain in Manitoba. as well as here in Yorkton, Melville in Saskatchewan. No real surprise. And of course, it'll be interesting to see how these last few ridings across the country shake out. Last report, I see 328 of the ridings reporting out of the 343. So we're getting there, getting pretty close to what we should be seeing for final numbers. And as you guys have been mentioning, the lead is for the Liberals at this point, and we'll see who gets those final few seats here as we progress through the rest of the election night.
Thank you very much, Doug. Thanks for joining us tonight as well. Doug Faulkner, the news director at GX94 Radio, and of course, the ag voice of GX94 Radio in Yorkton. Doug, thanks again for joining us. Let's have a quick peek at the Saskatchewan numbers. I'm just calling them up here on my screen in front of me. And right now, it looks like the Conservatives are leading or elected in 12, the Liberals in 2. That would be the Northern riding. And where are the Liberals leading or elected in the other one?
Regina Wascana is the other one.
Regina Wascana.
And that's just by a narrow margin there. So it's still a long way to go.
Very long way.
Yeah.
A very long way. But just so everybody out there knows, we are going to be on the air until we have a national result for you. That's how long we're going to be broadcasting this for you. But once we get a national result, once we know what kind of government, or even if it's going to be a minority government, that's when we'll be wrapping up our show tonight. And of course, tomorrow you will have all kinds of news, reaction, and analysis of the election on SASKTODAY.ca, as well as our other news pages on 620 CKRM, GX94 Radio in Yorkton as well. So please check those out in the morning, and tune in the morning as well for the news coverage that we'll be bringing you, and all the reaction from tonight so far. Again, the numbers keep changing. We're about to refresh, so I'll just wait another second or two, and I'll give Curtis a moment to punch that into the graphics for you so you can all see it too. But we are looking at what is more than likely going to be, I think we can even say likely going to be, a Liberal government again. Mark Carney, Prime Minister, and the Liberals look like they are going to have enough. Right now they have enough for a minority, but they're only 8 seats short of making that a majority government at 172. Remember, you need 172 in this parliament to have a majority, because there are 343 seats instead of 338. And as you can see, there's the numbers from the national race now. The Liberals leading or elected in 161, the Conservatives at 138, the Bloc Québécois. Even though their numbers are down a little bit, they're still performing well in Quebec at 24. Liberals aren't turning those numbers as much as you would have suspected they might have. Joining us on the telephone now, we have our reporter from SASKTODAY.ca, Martin Oldhughes. He's at the Seven Oaks Hotel on Albert Street in Regina, which is where Conservative Andrew Scheer is having his gathering tonight. Martin, these numbers don't look good for the Conservatives to form government, but they are seeing the number of seats they have going up. So is that giving them any joy tonight?
Oh, yeah, for sure, Andrew. About 10 minutes ago, a bunch of supporters were cheering on as they showed Andrew Scheer in the lead. Currently, he's actually in the lead by about 65%, so Scheer's looking strong. Most of Saskatchewan is looking like they are going to be Conservatives. It's worth noting, though, actually, Regina Wascana is pretty close. I believe just last-minute reporting showed Jeffrey Walters ahead by a bit. So it's interesting to see that, obviously, polls are changing. One interesting note, though, is so far it's only one poll reported, but Pierre Poilievre is actually not winning right now in his own riding of Carleton, which had the crowd a little bit stunned. Obviously, it's only one poll, but I think a lot of supporters were definitely a little concerned by that. So, yeah, obviously a little disappointment tonight with the Conservatives not forming government, but like you said, at least they're getting a little bit of support. So I'm sure a lot of people are at least enthusiastic about that. Okay, reporting live, I'm Martin Oldhughes, so I'll send it back to you, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Martin. Good job, young man. Martin Oldhughes reporting from Andrew Scheer's Conservative Party gathering in Regina tonight, where it looks like the Conservatives will be on the outside looking in again in the opposition benches. Right now they have, as we mentioned, 139 seats, leading or elected. The Liberal Party of Canada at 160. And again, John, we've talked about this a couple of times, but you'll notice how the popular vote is starting to get smaller and smaller for the Liberals. It was up above 50%. Now they're at 44.5%. And the Conservatives have slowly started to grow their share. And they were down at 30%. But now they're up to almost 40, almost 41% What does that tell you? Does that tell you that more conservative seats are in the offing here potentially as we move west?
What it more or less tells me is that the polls tend to be on the mark, because this seems to be getting into the range that the pollsters had been predicting in terms of the final margin and in terms of the percentage in the popular vote. So that's what it really tells me. And in terms of we're getting more results from Western Canada, which is typically strong areas for the Conservatives compared to Eastern Canada, and that's question. Making it a difference as well, as we see the numbers now from Saskatchewan, BC. You have a lot of Conservative areas there as well, and that's making a bit of a difference here in making the numbers a little bit tighter.
You know, when you talk about BC and being from there many years ago, I can tell you, when you're in the city of Vancouver, you have a lot of Conservatives on the outside of the city itself, but inside it's usually Liberal or NDP. That usually take those seats within the city of Vancouver. But BC, once you get outside of Vancouver, is just massive, and there are so many ridings around the province. And it'll be very interesting to see how all that comes to play. What is funny, though, is off the top, we were talking about how unpredictable polls have been, how they haven't been accurate in the last several elections, the provincial, the last few federals, even the U.S. election, it wasn't right. Where we were talking about Kamala Harris being the president of the United States. Now tonight, maybe we're seeing these numbers actually a little bit more accurate when it comes to these pre-election polls, John.
Yeah, and as you were talking about that, I'm just looking at the numbers here, and they're starting to get closer now.
Yes, they are.
156 to 145.
Yes, they are getting a little closer. Again, the number you need for majority is 172, and the math, 334 seats being heard from, tells me we're running out of seats for the Conservatives to catch up here, unless they can flip some of the ones they're trailing in.
Yeah.
But right now, this is what it's looking like is a potential minority government for the Liberals. But can you see the Conservatives in the Bloc teaming up?
I just don't see it. I think that the Liberals, if they get the most seats, they'll be encouraged to carry
Correct.
on.
Yeah.
And they'll get the first shot to form government. And I would imagine that they would want to form government, get a throne speech in there. And I very much doubt that they would hand the government over to the Conservatives. I think that if they can't make it work, we're more likely than not to have another election.
And so almost like a Joe Clark situation back in the 70s then, where he was in power for, 5-6 months, I think? Or was it a little longer than that? I might be wrong, but... and the same sort of situation where they called a snap election and he won, or they had an election and he won, and they had another election and he lost in the minority portion of it. You are listening to our live coverage of Canada Votes 2025 on SASKTODAY.ca.
This is 620 CKRM Regina, a Harvard media station.
Well done,
available everywhere on the CKRM app, Radio Player Canada, and at 620CKRM.com.
You're joining us now just after 9 o'clock in Saskatchewan. The polls have been closed for 90 minutes. You are watching live federal election coverage right here on SASKTODAY.ca. We are in the studios of 620 CKRM in Regina. We're broadcasting on the air on CKRM as well as on GX94. And we're streaming on multiple Harvard Media platforms tonight, including on 620 CKRM, GX94radio.com, SASKTODAY.ca, as well as our many other radio stations, FMs, Wolf Play, and Cruise. So it's great to have you all with us tonight. Thank you very much for joining us as we are looking at, and I think we can safely call this, we at Harvard Media are now declaring a liberal government. The question is, what kind of liberal government we're going to see. Mark Carney looks like he will become prime minister or stay on as prime minister after taking over from Justin Trudeau just, 45 days ago or so. And with the Liberals ahead, I wouldn't want to say well ahead, but ahead. 158 seats for the Liberals, leading or elected right now at the latest numbers we have in front of us. 143 for the Conservatives, 24 for the Bloc Québécois, 10 for the NDP. There is one other, which we'll have to investigate to figure out who that one is. But, you need 172 for a majority. and the Liberals are well short of that. And they're also just a little ahead of where they were at dissolution of the House. When the House dissolved, they had 152 seats, again, according to the numbers, and they just updated in front of me just mere moments ago, to 156. So they've picked up 4 seats today. The Conservatives, though, have seen a huge jump. They've jumped 24 seats so far, John. At dissolution, they had 120, and they now have 144 leading or elected. But yet they just can't seem to get that number big enough to catch up to the Liberal Party right now. Right now, the popular vote, 44.1% for the Liberal Party and 41% for the Conservatives. That gap has closed rapidly. So as you can see on the display in front of you, we have the Liberal Party ahead at 156, the Conservatives at 144, the Bloc Québécois at 24 seats, 11 now for the NDP, so they've picked up another one. So if you add the Liberals and the NDP together, you get 167 votes, if my math is correct, and I believe it is. And you're still short of a majority. Mm-hmm. So very, very interesting. The dynamic of the House will change because there's going to be more Conservative members, but the overall political situation doesn't look like it's going to change, John. It looks like we're heading towards a Liberal minority government here tonight.
It looks like it. It's they're at 156 seats, which you look at the grand total that they won in the last election, it was 160. So they are not getting the gains that they need to form a majority government at this stage of the evening.
And it's very interesting, too, when you look at, as you said, 160 seats the Liberals won. That was in September 2021. During the so-called COVID election. And then they lost 8 seats since that time. At dissolution, they only had 152. Now, that's resignations, that's by-elections, and some people choosing to sit as independents. The Conservatives in 2021 picked up 119 seats, but they had an extra 120 at dissolution, and you've seen their numbers improve tonight. Looking at the provincial breakdown, the Conservatives leading or elected in 13 ridings now. We're seeing one go back and forth, and that's Regina Wascana, I'm assuming, that we're seeing go back and forth.
Michael Cram's back in the lead there now by, let's just take a look here, by about little under 200 votes.
So that's still got a lot to go there, too. And the one riding, of course, is the far north, where we're seeing Buckley Boulanger in the lead currently right now. Carrying the Liberal banner. And as you joked about, or commented on, John, but as you commented about, odds are he's going to find his way into cabinet, or at least sub-cabinet level for sure. Is the only one from Saskatchewan.
Oh, there's no joking about it. I mean, he could be the happiest man in Saskatchewan tonight in terms of the elected representatives here in Saskatchewan, because he could become a cabinet minister.
A one-man Liberal caucus in Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
Oh, your provincial caucus meetings would be short. There's that.
And I could give you some updated numbers there. He's got 61% of the vote there right now.
So he's
in really good shape.
Yeah, he's I wouldn't say home and cooled, but he's getting pretty close there, right?
Yeah. 54% of the polls reporting there. He's cruising at this stage. So Buckley Boulanger looks like he's going to be headed to Parliament as and like I said, potentially a cabinet minister, but we'll wait and see on some of the other returns as well.
So that, and being the lone Liberal, a la Ralph Goodale, of course, who was the lone Liberal for the longest time here in Saskatchewan, and a cabinet minister as well, agriculture minister and things of that nature. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the High Commissioner for the Canadian government in London. So we are just waiting now for a few more results. There are 343 seats across the country that are up for grabs, up from 338 in the last election. We now have 336 seats that we've heard from. So there's just a few more to go before another 7, before we get everybody in reporting. But the Liberals ahead 156, the Conservatives 144, the Bloc Québécois 24, the NDP 11, and other independent, I'm assuming in this case, being 1. But that Liberal number, if they were hoping to change the dynamic in Parliament, that number is probably not going to do that.
It doesn't look like it'll do it for me. I mean, right now the question for me is, can the NDP get enough seats to be able to prop them up? Because right now I'm looking at this, and the NDP now are at 11 seats. So they're climbing back up, but 156 plus 11 equals 167, and that's short of 172, and
That's right.
And at this point in time, it looks like perhaps the Bloc could be in the position of being the kingmaker in Parliament, the balance of power.
It very well could be, and that would be very interesting dynamic. The Liberals and Bloc have done business a few times, I think, and the Conservatives too back in the day, I think, at the probably going back to the Reform days, really, to be honest. But, you know, I don't read Quebec separatism as being very high in terms of the agenda of people in Quebec right now, and maybe that's why we're seeing the Bloc not perform as well as they usually do, but they are doing quite well.
Yeah. But Quebec separatism is something to keep an eye on, because we at the provincial level, we know that the Parti Québécois is potentially in a position to possibly take power in Quebec.
That's right.
In the next provincial election, and that's going to be the next thing to keep an eye on. And if they do take power, we could have another referendum in Quebec. And I mean, you know, I know that people in the rest of Canada were hoping we'd be done with Quebec referendums for forever.
Yes.
But that could blow up on Mark Carney's watch over the next term, and you know, certainly something to keep an eye on for sure.
Well, and again, you know, as you look back in history, when times are tough, that's usually when separatism and that viewpoint generally gets pushed up a little higher, although there are different political reasons as well for various rulings or various government decisions which aren't working for people in Quebec, things they don't like. But I don't really see separation rhetoric that high right now. But as you pointed out, the provincial election is where that will get on full display with the Parti Québécois and their potential chance to form government in there. So again, giving you just a recap of the numbers, coast to coast, 156 for the Liberals, leading or elected, 146 for the Conservatives. Again, that number, 26 seats higher than they were when Parliament dissolved. The Bloc Québécois at 25, the NDP really taking it on the chin tonight, John. They're at 9 seats, and you know, when you consider they had 24 when the House dissolved, that's not looking good for the future leadership of Jagmeet Singh.
Yeah, I'm going to have to check and see if we have any results from Jagmeet Singh's riding, but so far not looking good for the NDP. I can probably update you on some of the ridings in Saskatchewan that are the battlegrounds, the closest races that we have going right now.
Please do. And
the closest race that we have going right now is in Regina Wascana, and Michael Cram has taken an even stronger lead there. He's got 3,386 votes compared to 2,819 for Jeffrey Walters of the Liberals, and has extended the margin. He's now up to 49.6% for Michael Cram, 41.3% for Jeffrey Walters. So that's looking closer to perhaps where we sort of expected the numbers would land tonight, but we still, only about a third of the vote has come in that riding. And taking a look at some of the other ridings, Saskatoon West, Brad Redikoff has really pulled away there, 51.8% of the vote there. The Liberals running in second in that riding as well. Regina Leuven, Warren Steinley now over a 1,000-vote lead, 54.8% of the vote there. So it looks like he's pulling away. And Corey Tucker in Saskatoon University, he's now up by about 1,200 votes, and 73% of the vote is in Saskatoon University. So Corey Tucker looks like he's on his way as well. So the way things are looking, looks like it's 13 out of 14 this time for the Conservatives in Saskatchewan. And
maybe some of you are wondering out there, how are the leaders doing? Mark Carney is well on his way to winning his seat in Nepean. He has 62.9% of the vote, well ahead of Barbara Ball of the Conservative Party. And as we look at Carleton, which is Pierre Poilievre riding, he has 657 votes, or 41.6%. But he's losing right now to Bruce Fanjoy of the Liberal Party with 872 votes and only 52.2%, 55.2% of the vote. But again, this is only 5 of 266 constituencies, or areas within the constituency
polls
being heard from polls.
Right.
And I got to admit, that's kind of slow here for a major riding like that. You would think that the count would come a little quicker.
Yeah, but with like 50 plus names on the ballot, I think that that's kind of understandable. I think that that's going to slow it down considerably this evening. Here.
Just to give you, and if you folks at home are following us on Elections Canada and you're going through these websites yourself, click on the tab that says Leaders, and when they show you Carleton, there are, I mean, I'm not even going to try and count them all, John. I mean, there are so many people on here. I mean, there's got to be 40 or 50. And I've never seen anything like this before. I've never seen so many people. Some people with no affiliation, some saying they're independent, which is what most of them are. Even the Canadian First Party. We're seeing the United Party of Canada, who I haven't heard about in a long time. So, there they are. Things like that. Even the Quebec version of the Rhinoceros Party is in this one. But Bruce Fanjoy is out ahead. But again, there's still quite a ways to go in this. It just refreshed and the numbers haven't changed. So I think you're right. It's just it's a long count there as we look at that. But Mark Carney looks like he's going to win his seat. I haven't had a chance yet to take a look at Jagmeet Singh, so let's take a quick peek at that.
And he's trailing there.
Oh, yes, he is, as a matter of fact. Just a little bit, though. Actually, the Liberal Wade Chang is out in front at 131 votes, but again, this is only 4 of 200 precincts. I think that was the word I was trying to pull to my head earlier. But only 4 polling stations have reported in. But Wade Chang of the Liberal Party leading in Jagmeet Singh's riding in Burnaby Central. He is running second right now, just ahead of the Conservative James Yan, just a 1 vote difference between the two, but not a ton of votes in yet. And we'll continue to keep an eye on that. So again, we are headed to a Liberal government. I don't think that's in any question. They have more seats, but the Conservatives continue to close this gap, John.
And it's getting much closer and closer, and we could be, I don't know, maybe we were jumping the gun a little bit about calling a Liberal win, because it's now 155 to 149 for the Liberals. Mm-hmm. It's getting shades of 72. Yeah,
exactly. But we are hearing from 341. So we're only too short of having all the polls reporting or all the different constituencies reporting in. Now at 342. So just 1 more to go. And the Conservatives have dropped back a little bit further now in terms of numbers. And I think we're seeing some ridings in some areas, including here in Saskatchewan, one riding kind of going back and forth. But at the same time, with only one other riding to hear from, at 157, that's going to be tough for the Conservatives to close that gap, even if it's only 8 seats. Yeah. They're not going to be able to close that gap.
Yeah, it's back to 157 to 148 now for the Liberals, so we can kind of breathe easier again, right?
Well, at least because we hate having to walk back our predictions, Those of us in the media, we don't like being wrong. We like being right all the time. No, we're not right all the time.
But it was basically everyone in the country that projected a Liberal win a while ago, and it looks like, based on these numbers, it looks like they're not going to form a majority. It looks like it's not happening tonight for the Liberals.
Just imagine if you could go back in time to December, just before Christmas of 2024, and you go to a Liberal Party member and you say, hey, there's going to be an election in April, and guess what? Despite how far behind you are in the polls, odds are you're going to form government. I mean, they would have taken that in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
But as we talked about right off the top, and we spent a lot of time talking about it, the Trump influence, but the Canadian patriotism, the standing up for Canada, the elbows up, whatever you want to call it, that's really changed the Liberals' fortune in this. It wasn't just removing Justin Trudeau. I don't think that was enough, but it's the situation with the United States of America and how that's panning out. And even that's petering out in the last few weeks. I mean, more or less, Trump's just firing shots here and there, but, we're not getting anything serious from him. He planned to wait until after the election.
Trump has kind of bigger fish to fry right now. He's in the middle of a massive trade war with China, which is dominating the headlines, and people in the States are, they're getting upset with the tariffs too. They're not too happy about what they're starting to understand what the ramifications could be for businesses down there. There's talk of a recession. Yeah, there's a lot of controversy about the tariff situation for sure.
Anytime in American politics, just so you know, if you roll out the R word, that is big political trouble for you. It's like the third rail. It's like trying to change Social Security or Medicaid. If you start getting into that situation, you start getting into a recession, your government is in big trouble.
That's right.
And that's with the midterms in the U.S., and we are kind of spending some time talking about American politics here, but it is influencing the Canadian election. And when you look at the midterms coming up a year from November, so we still have another year to go before that, that's when things could change. That's when things could change, when Congress would be able to rein in or roll back some of these things that the American president is doing. But at the same time, that's a long way away, and that's a lot of money that could get lost in trade between Canada and the U.S. between now and then.
We're still a year and a half away from the midterm elections in the United States, and that's a lot of mayhem can happen between now and then, and from the White House, and it may take until November of next year for things to start to be reined in there.
Yeah, for sure. So again, just looking at some of these numbers for you, we have 156 for the Liberals, 149 for the Conservatives, so now a 7-seat gap. The Bloc Québécois at 25, the NDP still at 10, and if you're the Liberals and the NDP, that's a disappointing number. And there's still 1-2 more seats to hear from, John, before we get to 343. And again, just so everybody understands, 338 was how many seats there were in the House of Commons for the 44th session, or the 44th Parliament. But the 45th is going to have 342 seats, so you need 343 seats, right? And you need 172 for that majority, and no one's going to get there tonight, John.
And it looks like right now the Liberals at 156, they are 16 short. And looking at the NDP, they only have 10. So the NDP looks like they are not going to have the balance of power. It looks like, based on these numbers, it's changed again, and now it's getting closer again.
Well,
154 to 152.
Yeah, your chart was just off a little bit there, and that's only because, Kurt, you had to go with the old numbers that were there 30 seconds ago. Sorry, my friend, we jumped the gun on you there, but he's got us all up to date. 154, 151, and 25. Joining us from the GX94 newsroom in Yorkton is Doug Faulkner, news director, and of course, agricultural news director. Doug, we're seeing that in Saskatchewan, only one, maybe two of these races could a chink in the blue armor in Saskatchewan, up north, and in Regina, Wascana, where we keep seeing it kind of go back and forth. But Kathy Wagenthal, where you are, she's pretty much home and cooled, is she not, sir?
You betcha. Yeah, she's got a nice lead right now. 77.9% of the popular vote, so almost 78%, and that's with over 70% of the polls reporting too. So yes, Kathy Wagenthal easily reelected in Yorkton, Melville tonight. She has well over 18,000 votes. Second place Liberal Luc Gamond has 3,300 votes. So yeah, it's over for Kathy Wagenthal. She will be heading back to Ottawa for the next session of Parliament. In Manitoba, our neighbors just to the east in Riding Mountain. As I'd mentioned earlier, those communities there include Swan River, Dauphin, Roblin, Russell, Neepawa, which are all just on the other side of the border from Yorkton, Melville. Conservatives winning there as well. Dan Major, the MP, incumbent MP, Conservative, now has 65.6% of the popular vote, with about 42% of the polls reporting, but he has well over 12,000 votes. Second place Liberal Terry Hayward with 4,600. So yes, Yorkton, Melville, and Riding Mountain in our listening area here anyway are safe Conservative seats for tonight. And it's getting very interesting to see how the numbers across the country are shaking out, with only one more riding to report out of the 343, and with the Liberals just clinging to that 154 to 151 lead at the moment over the Conservatives. Very interesting. And I mean, all it takes is 2 or 3 or maybe 4 ridings to flip one way or the other, and suddenly the Conservatives could find themselves in the lead here. Should be very interesting over the next half hour here or so.
Absolutely, and we'll continue to keep an eye on these numbers here for you as we continue through the night. You're watching our live election coverage on SASKTODAY.ca of Canada Votes 2025. Doug, thanks very much for joining us, man. Appreciate it. Doug Faulkner, news director and ag news director at GX94 Radio in Yorkton, joining us with a look at the Yorkton situation, but also giving us an insight into Western Manitoba as well, which we have a lot of listeners in, and we wanted to make sure that you got to hear what you needed to know for yourselves tonight. So these numbers, John, when you look at this, 154 Liberal, 151 Conservative now, 25 Bloc, 11 NDP. This is going to be the most interesting minority parliament ever.
This is turning into 1972 all over again.
Yes, sir.
Because in 1972, the Liberals had 109, the Conservatives had 107, and the Liberals, like we talked about it earlier in the evening about how David Lewis and the NDP propped up the Liberals during that term, and then the NDP really paid for it in the following election in 74. Mm-hmm. But that is what we are looking at here. But it looks like it's going to be the Bloc Québécois is going to have the balance of power right now.
And who do you think they would support? This is really the interesting thing. I mean, we've seen the Bloc in this situation sort of before, but as official opposition even back in the day for a while. But, when you look at that, I mean, that's a pretty interesting bridge that the Liberals are going to have to try to get, but the Conservatives even more so. If they want to vote against anything from the Liberal government, it's going to be difficult to get that support.
I think it's going to be a very unstable parliament. Based on these numbers, we're looking at a very unstable parliament in the next House. And I know that earlier in the evening, all the news organizations projected a Liberal win, but this is not exactly looking like a victory for the Liberals right now. This is looking very shaky at this point in the evening.
And more than likely, the possibility increases by the minute that, you and I were talking about. We just ran a provincial election just a few months ago, a federal election now. Hopefully 4 years from now, we get a 4-year break on covering elections for a bit.
I don't think
these numbers aren't telling me that's what's going to happen. These numbers tell me we're probably voting again in the next year or so.
I mean, these are the kind of numbers that tell me that, we could be back here at the polling booths in like 6 months, a year.
Well, again, the Joe Clark situation, we talked about that, right. Very similar to that. It's going
to take a lot of finesse in order to make this parliament work, and right now, the Liberals, they're in the driver's seat right now to hold on to power because, they are the government. But it is not looking like a stable situation at all.
And it's important to point out for everybody out there. So once all the votes are cast, the Governor General is told about the result, and then they call the party leader with the most seats. And that's really important to point out. So if the Liberals let's say the Conservatives jump up to 153 and the Liberals stay at 154, right? Yeah. They're still the ones that are in the driver's seat to form government.
Yeah.
Now, the Conservatives would have the ability to bring them down at any time. Any vote on money, any vote on anything like that in the House of Commons would potentially bring the government down. But even if the Conservatives and the Bloc say, no, we're going to work together and they have more, it's not enough. They would actually physically have to bring the government down to make that tell. So that's how that works, just so everybody knows. One party gets to go to the Governor General. You don't go there with two parties saying, we have enough, we're going to form government.
We have had situations in Canada that have been similar to this in terms of one party barely ahead of the other, and the second place party would then team up with other opposition parties and take the government out. And we've seen that happen in Ontario in actually a very similar situation because in that election, the Conservatives had a 4-seat margin over the Liberals, but it was the Liberals who made big gains in that election, and it became almost a saw-off situation. And then the Liberals did the deal with the NDP at that time and took down the Conservatives, and the Conservatives handed over power to David Peterson. He became the Premier.
Yeah.
And we also saw a similar situation in BC with Christy Clark.
Yes, we did. I was there.
Not too long ago. When, she had a bare, I guess it was a margin of 2 seats over the NDP.
Yeah.
But the NDP were able to do that deal with the Green Party to get the majority, a working majority in the legislature in BC and took the government out.
Let's check in with our reporter, Martin Oldhughes, who's at the Seven Oaks Hotel in Regina, which is where Conservative Andrew Scheer is having his gathering tonight. Martin, these numbers have shifted a little bit. Do the Conservatives, is there the feeling there that they could leapfrog ahead of the Liberals and get the most seats?
There's certainly been a vibe in the past 20 minutes, Andrew, of a lot of people have been paying attention to results, as you mentioned. At one point, there were almost only 2 seats difference between Conservatives and Liberals. More people have been coming in, paying attention to the results. And I think a lot of people here will be excited as Andrew Scheer has officially been reelected. He's held the seat since 2004, so there was really no surprise. He's currently leading by 5,000 votes. Most of Saskatchewan is looking at they are going to turn Conservative again. So it's really interesting, right, because an hour ago it did say the Liberals were going to form government, but now the Conservatives are very close. So I think a lot of people are coming in, tuning in, and want to see what happens in the next 30 minutes because really we don't know really what's going to happen. So interesting to see what's going to happen here. And yeah, there's a lot of energy here right now, Andrew, for sure. Reporting live, I'm Martin Olchus. Back to you, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Martin. He again is where Andrew Scheer is gathered together with his Conservative supporters here in Regina. And we'll be hearing from him again probably in the next little bit, as we're not close enough to say this is over yet. No. This is, there's still one more seat that we haven't heard from yet, one more constituency that hasn't reported in. We need 343. You need 172 for a majority. And the Liberals have 154, the Conservatives at 151. They're only 3 seats behind. And as you pointed out, John, and as Doug pointed out just a few minutes ago in his when he joined us from Yorkton, a couple of these close ridings flip, we could be having a different conversation about who's forming government. Yeah.
This is remarkable. Earlier in the evening, it looked like Liberals were cruising on their way to an easy victory tonight, and looked like at one point they might take a majority. And then things just slowed to a crawl for the Liberals, and now they're barely hanging on, and it's just remarkable. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the latest Regina numbers, and Michael Cram appears to be pulling away now in Regina, Wascana. He's up by a little over 900 votes over Jeffrey Walters of the Liberals, and has 51% of the share of the vote there at this point in time, with about 44% of the polls reporting there. So Michael Cram looks like he's getting a bit of distance in that riding, and may retain it for the Conservatives. And it looks like Warren Steinley and Regina Louvan, he's really pulled away there. He's got a lead of about 1,500 votes in that riding, 54.5% of the polls reporting in.
And Bucky Boulanger of the Liberals, though, leading up north still, and it looks like they're probably going to win that, but we're still a little early to say that, but it's getting closer to that.
Yeah.
Just to give you an idea as well, let's look at the province of Ontario for just a minute. I've got the numbers here in front of me. Remember, Jagmeet Singh had been spending so much time in southern Ontario trying to shore up some of those NDP ridings that they held, but also trying to chip away at some of the Liberal attempts in Ontario, especially southern Ontario. And when you look at the numbers, the Liberals have 64 seats in Ontario, the Conservatives have 58 seats, and the vote difference is percentage points, like tenths of a percentage point. So it's 46.8% Liberal, 46.1% Conservative, and the NDP have less than 5%. They are getting wiped out in Ontario tonight.
Yeah, they are getting wiped out across the country tonight. It's an ugly-looking scene for New Democrats across the country.
It is indeed. So again, sorry, go ahead, John.
Yeah, there was another close race that I wanted to mention, and that was in Saskatoon University, and it looks like the Conservatives are pulling away in that riding as well. Corey Tucker now with a 1,400 vote lead, 48% of the vote there, but it looks like he's in pretty much on his way to victory, and I believe it's, let me just take a look here one more time, 80% of the polls reporting in Saskatoon University, and down in Regina Louvan, Warren Steinley, 54.5% of the vote there, with 41% of the polls reporting there. So I just wanted to mention that too.
Let's check on the leaders now for you as well. We were talking about how the NDP are in deep trouble tonight. There's no question about that. They are in deep trouble tonight. And when you look at Jagmeet Singh, he's probably not even going to win his seat. Now, it's still very early. Only 9 polls of 200 have reported in Burnaby Central, which is Mr. Singh's riding. But right now it's being led by Liberal Wade Chang, who has 38.5% of the vote. It is Jagmeet in second. Sorry, no, he's in third place. behind the Conservative James Yan, who has 34.5% of the vote. Singh has 24.8 or just about 25% of the vote. So, that's not looking good for him tonight, especially when you see such a strong Liberal number and a strong NDP number, or not a strong, but and a strong Conservative number. Those left and left of center votes aren't going to go to two parties. They're going to go to one by and large. And that's what it looks like it's happening right now, John, as we check that one. In Nepean, which is Liberal leader Mark Carney's riding, we can tell you that he's leading that, and we can confidently say is going to be elected there with more than half of the polls, or just under half of the polls reporting in. He has 63.1% of the vote, so it looks like he will get that seat. The other federal seat we're keeping an eye on is the one that belongs to Pierre Poilievre. Now, he's represented the riding of Carleton for a number of elections.
Over 20 years.
And Bruce Fanjoy of the Liberals, now the number's just updated in front of me here, so we'll give you the accurate ones here. Bruce Fanjoy of the Liberals is ahead, but again, still a very slow vote count coming out of that riding. Only 5 of 266 have reported in, and we have 657 for Pierre Poilievre, and we have, I'm just trying to try, there's so many names in here. There must be 50 people on that ballot there. Yeah. 872 for Bruce Fanjoy. So, sorry, what was it you're trying to show me here?
Networks are starting to make some projections here.
Well, the Canadian press about an hour ago declared a Liberal government, but not which kind. But now you're seeing CTV reporting that they believe it's going to be a Liberal minority. That's with only 3 seats difference. That's a bold. That's a bold
move,
prediction.
I think. Yeah.
We said that it's going to be a Liberal government, and that's a bit of a bold prediction standing right now. Yeah. Just looking at the numbers, and again, when you look at these, you have to make sure you have. In most newsrooms that I've worked in too, the news directors would tell me, I got to see 50% of those polls in before I start even getting excited about any number. Right. And that makes a lot of sense. Because usually if you get to 50%, that's enough of a trend. That's enough of a vote total to sort of give you an idea, if it's not super tight, which way it's going to go. Mark Carney is a good example of that. He's well ahead in his riding, and even though there's still half the constituencies in that riding to report, or half the polls in that riding to report, he's well ahead, and he's probably going to win that one. The numbers, again, have shifted, and the Liberals have jumped out ahead, John, even further. They've widened their gap a little bit. The Liberals are now leading or elected in 157 seats across the country. The Conservatives at 147, the Bloc Québécois at 25, and clearly they are going to play a key role in this parliament. Yep. The NDP at 10. There are 2 others, and we'll suss those out for you in a little bit. And this is 341 of 343 ridings we've heard from tonight, John. So CTV again declaring a Liberal minority. I'm not quite there, but that last turn of the numbers makes me think that's probably what we're going to end up with.
To quote a British phrase, I think it's safe to say we're going to have a hung parliament.
A hung parliament, yeah, that's exactly the way to put it. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, that is probably a good way to put it, is that's what we're going to end up with tonight, is it looks like a Liberal minority government will continue, I guess, in this country. The only difference is there'll be a lot more people on the opposition benches, and by that I mean the Conservatives have increased their seats totals. They've gone up about 27 seats thereabouts since Parliament was dissolved. The Bloc Québécois, although going down a little bit, are going to be the third party, as the NDP is they were the third party ahead of that too. But the NDP at 24, they're down to 10. That's I don't want to say that's a disaster, but this is not a good night to be an NDP supporter.
Well, when you lose your leader, it is a disaster for the and it looks like that's definitely happening in Burnaby Central. The latest numbers coming in here. And, it's still early returns, but Jagmeet Singh is really far behind in third place now. We're talking 22.4% of the vote in that riding, and he is in third place.
Yeah.
That's not good at all for the NDP.
Just to people know, the Conservative James Yan is only 240 votes behind the Liberal Wade Chang there, so there's no guarantee that's going to stay that way with a lot of polls still to hear from. But right now, with the trend, Chang is out in the lead. But these numbers kind of keep shifting back and forth a little bit here.
There's still a lot of vote left to come in. That it could be one portion of the riding that's reporting in. But I would say that Jagmeet Singh is in deep trouble in his riding right now, and that could mean a leadership change in the NDP very quickly here.
Let's engage in a little informed speculation, if we can, here just for a minute. You're Pierre Poilievre, and you lose your riding tonight, but you're the leader of the minority in the parliament. What do you do?
That's a good question. If you're the leader of the minority, if you win the election, then you're able to stay on and probably find another seat. But if you finish in second place and you lose your seat, then, I mean, there's going to be decisions that have to be made. I mean, right now they're at 148 seats, so they made gains tonight, close to, I believe, 30-seat gain or something along those lines. I'm somewhere in that ballpark.
Yeah.
And, I mean, they've gained in the popular vote tonight. So there's been a lot of positives from the Conservative point of view, but if your leader loses your seat, I mean, that casts a pall over the entire evening, I think.
It does. And, you know, I mean, in these situations, too, I mean, we've heard some grumbling within the Conservative Party here going down the stretch about some things about the Poilievre leadership and things like that. But just, you know, prior to Justin Trudeau, of course, leaving, there's all sorts of grumblings. But you know, are those grumblings enough, you think, to force him out? I mean, if you don't have a seat in the House, you can't be an effective leader. So what does he do? Does he try to run in a by-election somewhere else?
He might try and run in a by-election. I mean, there are seats out there that he could potentially run in. He might end up looking at a seat in Alberta, for example, because he, you know, grew up there. And, you know, that's a possibility. But, you know, it's hard to say what the future holds for him at this stage. We'll just have to wait and see what the final result is in Carleton. And if he does go down tonight, that's going to be a major story and major shockwaves for the Conservative Party for sure.
There's no question about it. Well, let's take a look at the big board again. Let's look at the national numbers one more time for you, because they've shifted in just the last little bit. But we have the Liberal Party now leading or elected in 158 seats. We're still waiting for 2 more constituencies to report in. So we have 341 constituencies reporting in so far. 148 for the Conservative Party, 24 for the Bloc Québécois, and the NDP have dropped a seat now. They're down to 9, and they were up as high as 11 earlier. Now they're down to 9. Yeah, this is going to be a tough night. And you talked about this, John, earlier, about how the third party that supports the government in a minority government, in a legislature or in parliament, usually it doesn't come out well for them in the election campaign right after, and we're seeing some of that right now.
And part of the reason why is because they get blamed for all the failings of the government that they propped up. And they take none of the credit for the good things that happened.
Yeah, and they don't get any of the credit, really.
They don't get any.
Yeah, exactly.
And they are getting no credit tonight based on what we're seeing in the results so far.
No, I mean, this is clearly a 2-horse race across the country, and in Quebec, you got to add in the Bloc Québécois just because of their status there. But you know, it's been very interesting to watch this as the NDP are seeing their numbers dwindle. Again, they had 24 seats at dissolution. They had 25 seats in 2021 at the end of the 2020 election campaign, and so that is a huge drop. I mean, dropping 12 seats just like that that's huge.
Percentage of the popular vote for the NDP, 5.3%. That is an utter disaster across the country.
For a national party?
For a national party.
Absolutely.
This is like People's Party numbers from the last election, basically.
Yes. Actually, if you look at the NDP and then you look at others, so that's independents, that's others that are in there, the others are at 2.3%, and the NDP is at 5.3%.
Yeah.
Statistically, that's not much of a difference overall. And yeah, very disappointing night for Jagmeet Singh and the NDP. If you're the Liberals, I'm assuming you're happy because you're now up. You got a 10-seat 10-seat lead on the next party to you. But it's the Bloc Québécois that it appears they're going to be the ones that will be playing a key role in this one. And we know what that can be like.
I don't know how happy you are if you're a Liberal tonight. I mean, you know, the Liberals went into this campaign feeling very confident that they had the momentum, and there were times in this campaign when it looked like they were on their way to a majority. And for them to come out tonight with, I mean, it's almost like, you know, scraping to survival just about the way things have turned out.
You know, but the way these two parties have pummeled each other for the last 35 days, it's not surprised that they're all everybody's just sort of limping across the finish line now.
Yeah.
You know, But we do see these numbers, and the number percentage of votes is very, very close. Now, of course, the Conservatives have won the popular vote, but not been able to form government a couple of times in the last few years, in the last few elections. Here they are at 41.7% for the Conservatives. The Liberals are at 42.7%. I mean, there's not much of a difference there between the two, and that's reflected in the fact that they're only 10 seats apart. But right now, it's looking like the predictions of a Liberal minority are starting to play out, but it's going to be a very tight minority.
It's going to be a very interesting parliament when we do finally get back. I mean, the other thing we have to keep in mind, and we haven't had a parliament sitting for most of this year.
Yeah, that's right.
We had the prorogation, and a lot of people thought that the Liberals would pay a political price for that, but and maybe they have, I'm not sure, but looking at the numbers, it certainly looks like they're scraping across the finish line here.
Do you think that if Pierre Poilievre had taken a page from the Ronald Reagan book, from President Reagan, and he always said you have to sell conservatism with a smile. That was one of Reagan's favorite things to talk about. Poilievre just didn't have that personality, that side of his personality, that fun side of his personality, approachable side of his personality. Do you think that hurt him? That not being able to sell conservatism with a smile.
I think that was part of the reputation that dogged him going into the campaign. I think he tried to be more personable on the campaign trail, but that's something that certainly, impressions, first impressions kind of tend to be lasting impressions in politics.
Yes.
And I don't think he was able to really shake that as much as he could.
And to be fair, and just to make sure we turn the table on this a bit, the country doesn't know much about Mark Carney. He hasn't been a politician. He's now Governor of Bank of Canada, Governor of Bank of England. He's advised both parties when it comes to financial matters and economic matters. But he hasn't had the vetting time that someone like Pierre Poilievre has. He's been in Parliament for over 20 years. He's been the Conservative leader for a long time. He's been campaigning longer than this campaign has been running. But we're looking now at a number, John, that just popped up as we've just refreshed here. A few minutes ago, the Conservatives and the Liberals were like 2-3 seats apart.
Yeah.
That gap has changed considerably now. According to the latest number, and this is with all 343 constituencies reporting in, 164 for the Liberals, 146 for the Conservatives, 23 for the Bloc Québécois, one other, which is an independent, I believe. I think we've got to figure that one out still. But, that number changed for the Liberals. I mean, they just jumped 9 seats in just a few minutes.
And all of a sudden, the NDP have the balance of power again, believe it or not.
At 9, because they can get the Liberals to the majority of 172.
Yeah.
That's what you need. 343 seats, 172 to form a majority. But this number tells me the prediction is correct. We're going to have a Liberal minority. But you're absolutely on the money, my friend, because you said this is going to be an unstable parliament. Yeah. I think that's the word we could have a threat of election constantly hanging over us for the next several months, if not a year.
And the NDP are going to be in severe disarray because it definitely looks like Jagmeet Singh is losing his seat based on these numbers that he is down by over 1,000 votes in that riding right now. Now he's, to be fair, he's been NDP leader for quite a while. This is his fourth election now, I think, isn't it? Third for sure. And if you haven't been able to make a breakthrough a la Jack Layton, a la some of the others, your party's probably going to want to turf you, but it looks like they won't need to get that from him, as he's not even going to be able to win his own seat. Mark Carney well ahead in Nepean, and we're still seeing Bruce Fanjoy leading Pierre Poilievre in his riding, and by a substantial number in his riding. I mean, this is... what are we looking at in that riding?
6,873 for Bruce Fanjoy, just under 5,000 for Pierre Poilievre, 40% of the vote. But his number in the vote has dropped down. He was up around 42. He's now down to 40, almost 39%.
Those numbers do not sound good for Pierre Poilievre at all. I think he's in deep trouble right now.
One last time tonight. Let's check in with Doug Faulkner, who is at our GX newsroom in Yorkton, giving us a look not only at the Yorkton riding, Doug, but also at what's happening in Manitoba. And, clearly from your desk, from what you've seen, Manitoba and the Yorkton riding, no shock, no surprise. They've gone pretty much exactly as everybody expected.
Absolutely, yeah. Riding Mountain, which borders the Yorkton-Melville riding, they're basically the same, other than the fact that there's a little boundary line that divides us. But both ridings very similar, large agricultural populations, a number of First Nations communities thrown in there as well, and both very strong conservative strangleholds for many, many years now. Dan Major, who was the incumbent Conservative MP, will be heading back to Ottawa. He has 66.2% of the popular vote right now, and that's with just over 54% of the polls reporting. Of course, that riding includes communities like Swan River, Dauphin, Roblin, Russell, Neepawa, that part of western Manitoba. And of course, just on the other side of the boundary here is Yorkton-Melville, which of course includes those communities, as well as Esterhazy, as far north as Hudson Bay, and far west is Foam Lake. So it's a fairly large riding as well. Kathy Wagenthal, once again, being re-elected as the MP for this area. She's the Conservative incumbent. This seat has been held by either Reform, Canadian Alliance, or Conservative since 1993. So no huge surprise here. Kathy Wagenthal with 78.6% of the popular vote in the Yorkton-Melville riding right now, with over 82% of the polls reporting. So once again, Kathy Wagenthal well on her way to being returned to Ottawa, no doubt about it. And of course, I know when we will talk to Kathy, she's going to be, I guess it's going to be a bittersweet night for her. Obviously, winning with such a strong show of support from the electorate here in the Yorkton-Melville riding, but I know she's going to be very disappointed that they're going to come up as the official opposition and not as the governing party in the House of Commons in Ottawa here once we resume. But as you guys mentioned, we'll see how long it lasts. I'm not sure how long it will last. As John had mentioned, the NDP now does have the balance of power once again, but probably without Jagmeet Singh. So it could be a very tenuous grip on power for the Liberals here over the next months to perhaps 2 years at the most.
Doug, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Did a great job there from Yorkton and keeping us up to date, and we look forward to hearing more from you during the news tomorrow, sir.
All right, have a good night,
Doug
gentlemen.
Faulkner joining us from GX94 Radio in Yorkton, with giving us an update again on the Yorkton-Melville area, but also giving us a look into western Manitoba. So let's take a look at these numbers where, John, 10 minutes ago, we were talking about potentially the Conservatives turning the table and pulling this out in the last minute, but now we're starting to see that gap starting to widen again. And here's the latest numbers I have. We have 164 leading or elected Liberal. We have 146 leading or elected for the Conservatives, 23 leading or elected for the Bloc Québécois, the NDP, 9, and the other is Green Party, Elizabeth May in her Vancouver area riding, where she's ahead right now. And again, I didn't think her riding was in a lot of jeopardy because there is a lot of Green Party support in her area. But at the same time, just considering her political profile and how the Green Party is done and what's at stake in this election, I got to admit, I'm kind of surprised to see her just kind of not sailing through this election, but looks like she's gonna win this one.
Yeah, there were a lot of predictions that she could be in a fight, in trouble in her riding, and based on the numbers we're seeing, it looks like she may just pull it out and return to Parliament once again here.
And it's an interesting voice as well. I mean, it being a one-person party or a two-person party in their case, although it doesn't look like they're going to win that other seat. I think it was in Quebec, was it not? In the Montreal area, the other Green seat.
They had the other Green leader was running in Montreal, and I believe he lost tonight. Yeah.
So again, 164 for the Liberals, 146 for the Conservatives. So even if the Liberals are able to flip a few more seats, they don't look like they're going to reach 172. The Conservatives probably aren't going to reach 172. And the NDP, with 9 seats, do still, as we talked about, hold the balance of power, but not by a ton. And getting the Liberals
numbers,
up.
The latest numbers I'm getting show that they have dropped another seat, and the Liberals have dropped a couple of seats. So now the NDP does not have the balance of power anymore.
And that's the key. I mean, this is how it's going to come down to. And I mean, even if we stayed on the air till midnight, I don't know if we'd have an answer quite yet. in terms of how all this is going to shake out. But I think we can say with confidence now, it is going to be a Liberal minority government. It is going to be Mark Carney as Prime Minister. And it looks like he is going to win his riding. I mean, he is well out ahead of the Conservative right now. I'm calling it right now. I'll tell you, Mark Carney is going to win that. So that's done. But the other riding that's interesting, and we've been keeping an eye on this, is the Carleton riding, which is, of course, Pierre Poilievre. And he's trailing, and he's still trailing. And by about 1,600 votes, I want to say, with about 40 of 266 polling stations reporting in. So there's still a lot of people to hear from in that riding. But if you're the Conservatives, you're probably a little nervous looking at that number.
I think, if you're the Conservatives, that's going to cast a pall over the evening for sure, if you're a Pierre Poilievre supporter, for sure.
So, we talked about how unstable Parliament could be, but we're looking at two of the leaders going down to defeat tonight. Potentially. Pierre Poilievre and Jagmeet Singh, more than likely, considering what we're seeing in his riding right now. But it's not done his dinner yet either. There's still some room to go there. But that might give some stability to Parliament at first, while both of those parties pick new leaders or figure out what they're going to do to get their leaders into the House.
Yeah, and that's going to be a big question mark for the Conservatives, especially if Poilievre does go down tonight. For the NDP, I think they're going to have to start right away with a rebuilding and start looking for a new leader. They're going to probably have to choose an interim leader in short order here, given what's going on with Jagmeet Singh in his own riding right now. Last report, he was in third place and a not even close third place in his riding. And they're going to have to move very quickly to fill that void if he does not come back in the later count tonight.
I mean, now the vote count in Carleton has jumped considerably in terms of how many ridings we're hearing from, but it's still nowhere near 50%. So I'm not confident in saying that Bruce Fanjoy, the Liberals, is going to win it, but he is well ahead at 53.4 or 53.2% of the vote, with Poilievre at 43.5% of the vote. And the NDP, I mean, they're not even showing up at 220 votes total. But again, in that riding of Carleton, there was all kinds of people who put their names on that ballot. It's unprecedented. You don't see it in any other riding across the country. But there are enough independents, United Party of Canada, the Rhinoceros Party, and people with no affiliation. I mean, I'm trying to count them quickly, but it's got to be upwards of 50 people on this ballot. Yeah. I mean, I don't even know how people voted. I mean, the ballot I had didn't have a ton of room for for 50 names. Mm-hmm. I'm not really sure how they did that. We'll have to look into that tomorrow and find out. But right now, he's fighting for his political life there right now, you would think.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think if he can't deliver this victory, he's out?
Well,
that's a tough question.
It's a tough question because they got 41% of the popular vote tonight. They've gained in seats. It's a saw-off with the Liberals, holding the Liberals to a minority. But I mean, they were expecting a lot better showing. They were hoping going into this election to form the government, and they have fallen short of that. So there's going to be some big questions, and certainly, given what we've seen from the Conservatives the last couple of elections, usually the response has been the knives coming out, and we will see whether or not that happens again, or whether or not members of the party decide that they want Poilievre to stick around for one more go at it.
The Leslyn Lewises of the world, the others, they'll have a lot to say about that, because if they want to make a change, then
the Doug Ford wing of the party for sure in Ontario. I mean, they seem like the most vocal at this point.
Well, and of course, there's been some criticism of Doug Ford within the Conservative Party that he hasn't been exactly super helpful to the party in Ontario. In terms of campaign events and lending some of his political power to the campaign. And there's some speculation that he's interested in the top job with the Conservative Party. Yeah. That would be an interesting ticket with Mr. Ford at the top of it.
Well, Mr. Ford has experience at winning elections and winning large majorities, which, gives him the right to crow about how to win an election.
The other dark horse, and we're going to wrap up here in a few minutes, folks, at 10 o'clock, but the other dark horse in this And, I kind of feel like we're talking about someone before they passed away. Do you know what I mean? But, Poilievre is up against a very difficult situation tonight. But Mr. Houston, the premier out east, has been talking very much about being interested in a potential run of the Conservative leadership. And wouldn't that be interesting?
We've seen some interesting videos recently from Mr. Houston.
Precisely, yes. And he's making it known that already, excuse me, I'm sorry. We talked about when politicians are in trouble, that's when you know who your friends are, and more importantly, you know who your enemies are.
Yeah.
And Mr. Poilievre's in trouble, and he was in trouble down the stretch of this election campaign with talk of him losing his seat, with talk of him not being able to get the party over the top. And you're starting to see Leslyn Lewis, Doug Ford, and Mr. Houston, Tim Houston out there, doing the same thing, all starting to talk, waving to the crowd and going, don't worry, we're here. We're ready to step up. Very interesting to see how now Mr. Poilievre will have to fight an internal battle before he's able to fight the battle in the House of Commons.
Yeah, we'll see how it all plays out for sure.
Why don't you take us around the horn one more time and let's take a look at Saskatchewan ridings, I think, if we can, if you've got some in front of you.
Basically the story in Saskatchewan is going to be 13 for the Conservatives and 1 for the Liberals tonight. The Liberals did break through in Disnessy, Mississippi, Churchill River. Buckley Belanger with 61% of the vote there. 77% of the vote coming in so far in that riding. And so the Liberals will be happy to get a breakthrough in Saskatchewan, but that is the only breakthrough they're going to be able to get tonight, because taking a look at Regina Wascana, Michael Cram looks like he's going to be back in again over close to a 1,400 vote lead right now over Jeffrey Walters as the Liberals. Regina Louvain, Warren Steinley back again. It looks like 1,600 vote lead there. Was about 58% of the polls reporting in. Corey Tucker in Saskatoon University, that was another one that was a close one, and it looks like he's going to be back by about 1,800 votes right now is the lead there. It was about 89% of the polls reporting there, so the Liberals are not going to be able to catch up there. It looks like Corey Tucker is going to go back, and that's what we're looking at in Saskatchewan. A good night for the Conservatives, but also a good night for the Liberals up in Disnessy, Mississippi, Churchill River.
And the lone Liberal in Saskatchewan, it looks like.
That's right, and it looks like he may be a cabinet minister fairly soon.
Yep. So just before we break at the top of the hour for news, we got about 90 seconds here. We'll go over the totals here. So the latest number that we have right in front of us, all 343 polling constituencies across the country have now reported in 161 leading or elected for the Liberal Party, 150 leading or elected for the Conservative Party, 23 for the Bloc Québécois, 8 for the NDPs have dropped another seat, and the Green Party has 1 seat. That's Elizabeth May again on the West Coast. So when you look at this number, the Liberals are going to have to do business with the Bloc Québécois to stay afloat.
It looks like it.
That's how this looks. You don't need everybody in the Bloc, but you're going to need some Bloc voters for sure. And they're pretty much, as their name suggests, Bloc Québécois. They vote as a bloc. So we'll have to see. But again, as you look at that number, we do have a Liberal minority government. I think that's without any question now. With the Conservatives in second, the Bloc Québécois and the NDP have been decimated tonight, losing probably not only their leader, but also their ability to prop up the government. Really, they will, but they won't have as much to say in terms of getting some, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for, compromises from the Liberals. John.
Yeah, we still have to wait and see how it all shakes out, but so far, all we can say for sure is that we are definitely looking at a hung parliament here in Canada after this election once again.
So interesting political days ahead. This election that we had today may mean we're not waiting 4 years for the next one. I want to thank Curtis Gammon, and I also want to thank him very much for all the technical work he's done tonight, as well as Alan Lee, who's been working the board as our producer tonight. I also want to thank you and everybody who voted tonight. Have a good night, and thank you.